a cloaked figure approaches a king seated on his throne in a grand hall, where the king angrily declares he is stripping someone of their right to succession, revealing the subject of his ire to be the seventh prince, Noah, who remains calm, confusing the king about his lack of protest. So Noah casually explains that it's because he is considered incompetent. And the king confirms an appraisal judged Noah to be completely skillless, causing other royals to sneer at the skillless prince being a stain on the family. Then the king declares Noah is not fit to rule, pointing a finger, but mentions that exiling a prince would bring shame to the kingdom. So instead, he officially grants Noah the remote Carter fiefdom, at which point Noah beams with joy and thanks the king profusely, eliciting a shocked cry of his name from another prince, who is revealed to be the sixth prince, Darva, a user of the Sword Saint skill, and he angrily grabs Noah's collar, demanding to know why his attitude is so nonchalant. Then he yells that Noah has been stripped of his rights, yet seems perfectly calm, to which Noah glares back, stating it is natural to be calm about being exiled, before cheerfully adding that it's a shame he never wanted to be king anyway, which infuriates Darva, who draws his sword and shouts in frustration, swinging the weapon down towards Noah with a furious expression, only for Noah to stop the blade with just 2 fingers. The king looks on in shock, remarking that attacking another prince is a major incident. But Darva screams, "Die!" as he continues his attack, while Noah watches him calmly. However, the sword misses its target, slamming into the marble floor with incredible force, showing that Noah easily dodged the strike, now sitting on the ground unharmed, which leaves Darva staring in wide-eyed disbelief at the outcome. And Noah casually remarks that Darva must be merciful to have intentionally missed, as the other royals and even a cat in the window are stunned by the turn of events, leaving Darva to tremble in confusion, wondering what just happened. Then Noah gets to his feet as a small white cat approaches him, and he begins to walk away down the grand hall with the cat following him, casually dismissing Darva's Sword Saint skill as a mere fake over his shoulder, which triggers a flashback for Darva of the moment Noah confronted him, realizing that Noah moved faster than the speed of sound to catch his blade, as he recalls Noah effortlessly stopping the sword with just 2 fingers, and subsequently shattering the supposedly indestructible blade into tiny pieces, prompting a furious Darva to shout after him, unable to accept what he saw. Yet Noah simply waves goodbye, declaring his plan to live a quiet life now, at which point a brilliant light envelops him, shocking the king while Darva yells for him to wait. But with a final farewell, Noah vanishes completely from sight, leaving a stunned silence in the throne room, with only the cat where he once stood. The king stares in disbelief, muttering that only a sage can use teleportation magic. And meanwhile, a horse-drawn carriage makes its way down a country road, where inside, Noah sits comfortably, reading a book, while the little white cat with him asks if he's truly alright with being banished. To which Noah addresses the cat as Rowley, asking if it has forgotten his grand plan. And Rowley, identified as Noah's servant, confirms that it remembers perfectly, as Noah smirks, revealing that being disinherited and sent away was all part of his scheme, before celebrating wildly, overjoyed at finally being free to live as he pleases. And he continues to jump for joy as the cat watches on, slightly bewildered, prompting Rowley to sigh, exasperated by Noah's claims of incompetence, especially since Noah is a genius who has lived 2 past lives as a sage and a sword saint, leading Rowley to question why the third life of a great hero has become like this. And Noah confirms that he was indeed a hero in both of his past lives, but then grabs his head in frustration, screaming that being the strongest is a huge pain, continuing his rant about how power only brings unwanted attention and endless problems, as he declares that he's been a hero twice already and is tired of the constant work, which is why he was so dismayed to find a battle for succession waiting after reincarnating. So he decided to feign incompetence in order to withdraw from the competition altogether, a complex plan that involved acting inept while secretly falsifying his appraisal results. And as Rowley listens, it begins to formally introduce itself to the prince. Noah leaps out of the carriage as Rowley tells him to brace for the landing, and Noah retorts that since Rowley is a cat, it should be easy. But just then, Their entire carriage is violently thrown off the road, before being completely obliterated by a massive falling object, which sends the small white cat flying through the air in a panic. While Noah, having jumped just in time, lands perfectly on his feet. He then turns to see the enormous boulder that destroyed his ride, wondering about its origin. However, Noah seems entirely unfazed by the sudden turn of events, and as he watches, the giant rock suddenly shatters into countless pieces, revealing a cat-eared girl who scolds him for dodging the attack with levitation magic. In response, Noah remarks that such magic was child's play during his time as a sage, and as the girl, now revealed to be Rowley, argues that it's not normal, she freezes, suddenly hearing a series of heavy footsteps approaching them. So both Noah and Rowley turn their attention toward the deep forest, from which a colossal, rocky head emerges from above the trees, leaving Rowley staring upwards in utter disbelief and confusion, as a gigantic, tortoise-like monster made of stone reveals its full form. The creature towers over them with its immense and imposing body, causing Rowley to panic, identifying the beast as an S-rank volcanic turtle. But Noah calmly reminds Rowley that she is a demon god, who then recalls her powers are sealed. Rowley cries that her demon god powers were sealed away in the Forbidden Library, then frantically asks Noah for his plan against the S-rank monster. But Noah seems to mishear, instead commenting on her S-rank chest. And as they argue, the volcanic turtle roars while smoke billows from its back, leaving Rowley terrified, while Noah looks on with casual amusement. In response, the beast launches several fiery boulders from its shell into the air, causing Rowley to scream that the projectiles are falling directly on them. The meteors then slam into the ground, tearing up the earth with massive explosions. So Rowley can only watch the devastation in complete shock. However, Noah simply raises his open hand toward the incoming attack, and the entire volley of boulders instantly disintegrates into harmless dust. This makes Rowley shriek in disbelief, questioning how he did that with one gesture. Noah dismisses it as something mid-rank adventurers from his era could handle. Just then, the giant stone turtle lets out a strange, gurgling roar, prompting Noah to turn and tell the annoying creature to be quiet. With a glare, he then sternly commands the monster to disappear, unleashing a massive torrent of dark, swirling magic from his extended hand, which quickly condenses into a crackling sphere of destructive energy. This powerful blast slams directly into the volcanic turtle's enormous head and punches a clean hole straight through the beast's rocky face. The massive monster's body completely disintegrates, sending a shockwave across the forest. Rowley trembles in utter disbelief, stammering that what she just saw must be ultimate magic. As she asks if he used extreme magic, Noah casually floats down from the air. He then dismisses her awe by explaining it was just a simple fireball spell. Next, Noah surveys the area and notes that their carriage has been completely destroyed. He realizes they'll have to fly back, glancing over at a bewildered Rowley. Just as Noah begins to lift off the ground, Rowley desperately calls out for him. She angrily demands to know why he's trying to leave her behind. While Noah flies away, muttering that he's forgotten something, Rowley shouts about how overly capable he is. Back on the ground, a different girl with blonde hair watches him leave. Wondering if he saved her, she gazes after his retreating figure as it grows smaller in the sky. Recalling the scene, she thinks about how gallantly the mysterious person stood. With sparkling eyes, she compares his heroic presence to that of the ancient hero. The story then shifts to a slightly earlier time in the village of Ain. A group of villagers runs in panic from some unseen disturbance. The blonde-haired girl, Rista, notes that another monster seems to be on a rampage. However, an elderly man comforts Rista, telling her not to worry. He explains that their village is protected by a barrier cast by the ancient hero. A diagram illustrates that the village's barrier is right next to the dangerous Naraku forest. Rista looks concerned, voicing her doubt that such an old barrier will be enough to protect them. Suddenly, one of the villagers points to the sky in terror, shouting for everyone to look. Above them, a colossal, mountain-sized turtle monster roars as it looms over the entire village. The group identifies the beast as a volcano turtle, a notoriously dangerous S-rank monster. Without hesitation, The monster brings its enormous foot crashing down towards them. Its foot slams directly into the village's magical barrier, causing a massive shockwave. The ancient barrier sparks and crackles violently under the tremendous impact. Rista stares in stunned disbelief, unable to process what is happening. After a moment, the protective barrier shatters into countless fragments. Despair washes over the villagers as they realize this is the end. One man mutters that without the barrier, they are merely food for the monster. In that instant, Rista takes a determined step forward, facing the impending doom. A close-up shows her firm, unwavering expression as she makes a decision. She thinks about how this village raised her, and how much she loves everyone in it. Filled with resolve, she decides there must be something she can do to protect them. Then, Rista suddenly breaks into a sprint, dashing away from the others. The elderly man calls out her name, asking what she's doing. She glances back and announces her plan to lure the monster away. While the others shout for her to stop, Rista runs toward the forest's edge. She reasons that even if she gets caught, she can at least lead it away from the village. Her foot kicks up dirt as she pushes herself to run as fast as she possibly can. While sprinting, Rista suddenly loses her footing and tumbles hard onto the ground. From the forest floor, she looks up to see the volcano turtle now looming directly over her. The monster's gigantic, singular eye focuses intently upon her, pinpointing its prey. Rista is frozen in shock, completely baffled by this turn of events. Just then, the turtle's attention is drawn to a horse-drawn carriage that has appeared nearby. From her position, Rista wonders who else could possibly be in this remote location. In a flash, the monster snaps its jaws shut, completely crushing the carriage. Rista cries out in terror, shouting for the person in the carriage. She desperately yells for them to flee for their lives. From the wreckage, a voice remarks on how it was all over in an instant. The voice continues as the scene reveals the smoldering, annihilated remains of the monster. Noah stands coolly amidst the destruction, extinguishing a wisp of dark flame on his fingertip. Stunned, Rista clutches her chest and wonders if he just saved her. Then, just as quickly as he appeared, her mysterious savior leaps away like a legendary hero. Rista is left blushing and completely captivated by the handsome stranger. Her reverie is broken by an angry shout from somewhere nearby. Emma storms into view, furiously yelling at Noah for leaving her behind. She complains that she has to chase him, and how tedious it is dealing with non-humanoid forms. Changing into a small winged cat, Emma flies past a still bewildered Rista. Meanwhile, the villagers scream in terror, mistaking the aftermath for another monster. The scene shifts to the Lord's Manor in the Carter territory. Noah arrives, gleefully proclaiming it a perfect place to hide out. He then happily turns to call out for someone named Lowry. However, he finds himself alone at the gate and questions where they could be. With a jolt, Noah realizes he might have forgotten them somewhere. He dismisses the thought just as a giant, furious dragon appears behind him. The dragon roars, enraged at being left behind by him. A very confused Noah wonders who this person is, as little chicks pop into existence around him. From atop the hill, the crying dragon wonders what Noah is thinking. She complains about being abandoned and having to fly in her true form. The dragon becomes enraged, threatening to kill him on the spot. Noah's face darkens menacingly as he asks exactly who she plans to kill. Instantly terrified, the dragon grovels, calling him its brother for life. Emma pops out from behind the dragon's head, remarking on how scary Noah is. Nearby, Rista watches in awe, amazed that he can command such a powerful dragon. Noah finally notices her, startled, and asks who she is. She gracefully introduces herself as Rista from the village of Ain. With a beaming smile, Rista sincerely thanks him for saving her life. Emma chimes in, clarifying that Noah rescued her from the volcano turtle. Noah is utterly shocked by this revelation, shouting in disbelief. Rista clings to Noah, joyfully calling him the new dragon-taming lord. He gets momentarily flustered by the close contact and her pleasant scent. Aboard Lowry, Noah demands to know how she found out, so Emma explains. He then freezes in utter horror, realizing his power was exposed on his very first day. Devastated, Noah collapses, lamenting his meticulously crafted retirement plan. He then leaps up and furiously confronts Lowry for ruining his act. With a puff of smoke, Lowry reverts to her human form, telling him to calm down. She then smugly reveals that the castle staff was already well aware of his strength. A dumbfounded Noah can only stare, utterly speechless at this revelation. Lowry proceeds to recall a time a monster horde attacked the capital without his knowledge. During that attack, he killed a sleep demon, thinking his concealment magic had worked. However, his magic was incomplete, and the shocked royal knights witnessed the entire battle. Emma adds that he has made many other competent moves that went completely unnoticed. This new information makes Noah wonder if his own father and brother are similar. Meanwhile, Rista eagerly grabs his hands, expressing her delight to have him as lord. Noah immediately panics, desperately telling her to wait a moment. She just continues to smile warmly, officially welcoming him to the territory. In that instant, a resolute look of determination appears in Noah's eye. He tries to convince Rista that he is actually truly incompetent. Noah nervously insists that great people are just humble, earning Emma's silent admiration. While Rista and Emma smile gleefully, Noah despairs over his shattered retirement plan. He lets out an anguished scream, wondering how everything went so wrong. Sometime later, inside the Lord's mansion, Noah lies on the floor completely dejected, a small cat resting on his chest. He recalls his original goal, to be seen as incompetent and exiled to a quiet life. Suddenly, Rista appears, proudly announcing she has finished cleaning the entire mansion. This only reminds Noah that his true strength was exposed to the very first villager. He confronts Rista, demanding she go home, but she insists on serving him to repay her debt. She gets flustered, misinterpreting his words, though Noah quickly dismisses her concerns. He then tells her that she doesn't need to work so hard for his sake. Rista completely misinterprets this, believing he intends to make all the citizens happy himself. A sweating Noah laments that his power has been exposed, finding this territory's potential terrifying. For a brief moment, Rista's smiling face appears strangely ominous. Realizing only Rista knows so far, Noah resolves to prove his incompetence to everyone else. He then spots the previous lord's remaining staff and sees his perfect opportunity. With newfound determination, Noah knocks firmly on a grand wooden door. He calls for them to enter, with Rista watching curiously from behind. The large doors swing open slowly. An elderly man introduces himself as Sebastian, the head butler, and greets his new lord. Noah immediately identifies the head butler as the perfect target for his act of incompetence. Sebastian mutters to himself about the rumors of an impolite brat. To Noah's delight, this confirms the butler is the perfect pawn for his plan. Feigning anger, Noah stomps forward, questioning Sebastian's disrespectful attitude. The butler calmly replies, citing rumors that Noah is an incompetent prince and a disgrace. This brings Noah immense joy, as he realizes the head butler already despises him. He celebrates finding the perfect foil to help him maintain his incompetent persona. Rista, on the other hand, immediately scolds Sebastian for his insolence. She earnestly defends Noah, recounting how he bravely protected her village from a volcanic dragon. Sebastian dismisses her tale as a fabrication, doubting such a lazy-looking boy could perform such a deed. He then proudly declares his loyalty is only to the former lord, Carter, as Noah silently observes. Rista worries about keeping such a person close, but Noah reassures her that it's fine. Sebastian watches this exchange, thinking it's only natural for Noah to push back. Noah then states that a proud territory can't be left to an inexperienced youth like himself. With a stern expression, Sebastian silently agrees with Noah's assessment. Noah understands that Sebastian intends to expose his flaws to get him removed from the territory. In an unexpected move, Noah embraces the butler, enthusiastically thanking him. Sebastian is utterly stunned by the sudden hug, stammering in confusion. Giving a thumbs up, Noah encourages the butler to criticize him freely for the good of the domain. Internally, Noah plans to leverage Sebastian's efforts to cement his own reputation for incompetence. Sebastian is left baffled, questioning the generosity of his new, perplexing lord. Sebastian recoils, momentarily wondering if Noah is a true king's vessel. However, he quickly dismisses the notion, declaring he won't befriend an incompetent prince. With that, the butler storms out of the room as Noah watches him leave. Observing this, the cat familiar notes that a turbulent new act has begun. That night, under the dark sky, an establishing shot shows the grand mansion. Then, deep within a shadowy cavern, a sinister meeting is taking place. 3 cloaked figures gather, with one asking about the new lord. Another mockingly comments that incompetent trash always seems to wash up in this border territory. In response, their menacing leader states, "This is convenient for their plans." His 2 subordinates are visibly startled by his declaration. The leader then gives a wicked smile, expressing gratitude for the incompetent prince's arrival. He ominously declares his intent to claim the human world for himself. Later, back at the mansion, a new day begins. Sebastian stands on an upper balcony, addressing all the household staff gathered below. He formally calls for everyone's attention to introduce the new lord. Suddenly, Noah appears on a throne, dramatically announcing himself as the incompetent prince. He follows up with a cheesy wink, telling everyone to get along. As Rista questions his strange actions, the staff looks on in disbelief. The maids whisper amongst themselves, wondering if he really is as incompetent as rumored. Sebastian facepalms, utterly dismayed that the new lord can't even manage a proper greeting. Rista voices her frustration at the lack of welcome they've received. From the courtyard below, Sebastian angrily shouts at Noah to get dressed properly. Rista then asks what he plans to do, and Noah says he has a strategy. With that, the prince turns back to the staff and loudly calls for their attention. He declares his intention to conduct layoffs, stunning the assembled household. Sebastian stares up in shock at Noah, who stands defiantly on the balcony. Noah internally praises himself for coming up with a truly incompetent act. However, his cat familiar questions how he can even identify the competent staff. Turning slightly, Noah confidently replies that it's obvious. He then extends a gloved finger, pointing down toward the crowd of servants. His finger lands on a specific maid, who looks up in surprise. Next, he points to a young, white-haired butler, who appears startled. His finger then moves to a third butler, who reacts with similar shock. Grinning, Noah declares that everyone he just pointed at is now fired. From the side, Sebastian shouts in disbelief at the sudden dismissals. The head butler also protests, calling them capable and long-serving employees. Noah counters with a smirk, stating they harbor evil intentions. He internally celebrates firing people for an irrational reason, solidifying his incompetent image. The fired staff members look up in confusion, asking why this is happening. Suddenly, their demonic forms are revealed, and one asks how he could have possibly known. One of the fired butlers begins transforming, his human guise ripping away. He confirms his identity, stating he is from the demon race. Up on the balcony, Sebastian looks on in utter disbelief. He then questions how demons manage to disguise themselves as servants. Noah, however, simply peeks from behind a pillar, with a knowing smirk. The fully transformed demon demands to know how the new lord discovered them. The prince nonchalantly replies that he can tell by looking at their magical energy. Stunned, the demon exclaims that Noah saw through their complex magical camouflage at a glance. Noah suddenly grows flustered, as Sebastian asks what on earth he's talking about. Ignoring this, the demon leader roars that demons are humanity's natural enemy. Noah is shocked, learning from his cat familiar that this is common knowledge. His familiar then scolds him for not studying properly while in the castle. With his head in his hands, Noah realizes he's accidentally fired competent staff. Rista, however, clasps her hands in adoration, thinking he's an incredible lord. She proudly declares that this is the greatness of Lord Noah. Hearing this, the demon leader grits his teeth in pure rage. He laments that their infiltration plan was exposed by a single brat. Screaming that he won't be forgiven, the demon's body begins to swell with power. He transforms into a massive, muscular beast, vowing to slaughter them all. In response, Noah leaps from the balcony and drives his fist into the creature's side. Noah apologizes to Rista, asking her not to be mad about him firing her. The demon stares in disbelief, shocked at how quickly Noah closed the distance. An incredible force pins him down, and he finds his body completely unable to move. From the demon's perspective, Noah appears as a terrifying entity with glowing eyes. Unable to withstand the pressure, the demon leader suddenly bursts through the wall and flees. Noah and Rista watch from the balcony as he escapes, leaving a gaping hole. The prince panics, asking why the demon ran. As his familiar notes, he looked threatening. He then turns to find the remaining butlers and maids staring at him in stunned silence. The maids whisper amongst themselves, amazed at how he instantly uncovered the demon's plot. Upon seeing this, Noah and his cat share a look of dawning horror. Rista and the other maids rush forward, their eyes sparkling with pure adoration for Lord Noah. Suddenly, the butlers grab him from behind, hoisting him into the air. They joyfully declare their unwavering loyalty, vowing the domain will thrive under him. As the staff carries him, his familiar gleefully notes that his number of believers has grown. From a distance, Sebastian observes the chaotic celebration with a stern expression. He reflects on how long-serving staff were demons, a fact the previous lord never knew. Watching the staff celebrate Noah, Sebastian clenches his fist with resolve. He then points forward, defiantly declaring that he will not accept this. Noah suddenly appears, cheering for Sebastian and telling him he loves him, much to the butler's chagrin. His familiar simply sighs, watching the chaos and deeming the mass firing a great success. With the mansion wall breached, the road ahead for Noah's domain appears difficult. Sometime later, life continues within the now demon-free estate. Noah sits down with Rista, inquiring about her village's protective barrier. She explains that the barrier has become unstable, worrying all the villagers. Hearing this, Noah and his familiar realize she's essentially moved into the mansion. The prince is perplexed, having never known such a barrier even existed. Suddenly, Sebastian bursts in, admonishing the incompetent prince for his ignorance. Noah, however, joyfully embraces the butler, thanking him for coming to help. Sebastian then begins explaining that the domain is known as the Forest of Calamity. Rista adds that the ancient hero's barriers are now starting to come undone. The butler gravely states that if left alone, her village will not survive. Reading a book, Noah deduces that the barrier is simply aging and its power supply is cut. Both Sebastian and Rista stare at the prince in absolute wide-eyed shock. Rista excitedly asks if he's already uncovered the secrets of the hero's barrier magic. Internally, Noah panics, while his familiar laments that he's revealed his genius yet again. Following this discussion, the group travels to Rista's hometown, the village of Ain. The villagers gather, suspiciously observing the arrival of their new lord. Noah awkwardly introduces himself as the incompetent prince, with Rista at his side. Looking up, he immediately perceives the large cracks running through the village's barrier. An elder explains that a fire dragon's attack caused the damage, and they are near their limit. Noah confidently vows to restore the barrier and bring peace to their land. In response, the villagers can only stare in stunned silence. Meanwhile, his familiar scolds him for breaking his incompetent act. The villagers, however, grow disappointed, believing he's set them up for failure. Unfazed, Noah simply tells them to watch as he walks through the village. As he does, he pulls a familiar, glowing pendant from beneath his shirt. He then declares it's time to get a little serious as his power flares. The immense pressure he releases sends his familiar tumbling backwards in shock. With a smirk, Noah reaches out, deciding they're better off without the barrier. The magical runes etched across the sky immediately begin to crack apart. In a single powerful motion, he completely shatters the village's protective dome. Rista and the other villagers watch in absolute horror as their barrier is destroyed. Noah, however, misreads the room, proud of his seemingly foolish act. The villagers fall into despair, wondering how they will survive without their protection. Internally, Noah celebrates, certain that they are now convinced of his uselessness. Suddenly, a maid rushes forward, pleading with everyone not to misunderstand. She boldly proclaims that the prince destroyed the barrier on purpose. Her words leave the villagers utterly bewildered and confused. She explains that Noah doesn't want them relying on relics of the past. Noah sweats nervously, caught completely off guard by her intervention. The maid declares that with her lord here, he will simply exterminate the monsters. A villager turns around, stunned and questioning what she just said. At the same time, Noah himself expresses the exact same shock and disbelief. He tries to interject, telling them to wait, but the villagers are already believing it. Excitedly, they realize their new lord will defeat the monsters for them. The crowd begins to enthusiastically cheer for Lord Noah as he tries to stop them. Peeking from behind a corner, Noah panics, wondering what's wrong with this village. His familiar dryly notes they've become like religious zealots, twisting his actions. Just as Noah is about to protest, a series of terrified screams cut him off. A man points frantically towards the edge of town, spotting something terrible. A massive horde of slimes, skeletons, and pigmen begins to swarm the area. The full army of monsters becomes visible, charging straight for the defenseless village. Rista and the others stare in horror, realizing the monsters noticed the barrier was gone. With all eyes on him, Noah decides to pretend to fight, much to his familiar's concern. Putting on a show, he lets out a war cry and charges toward the monster horde. Suddenly, a dark and immense power erupts from his body, his eyes glowing ominously. In a flash, the entire front line of the monster army explodes in a cloud of gore. Noah stops in his tracks, utterly baffled by the devastating power he just unleashed. He remains frozen in place, looking back at the carnage he accidentally caused. The villagers, however, erupt in cheers. Amazed he repelled the horde without even fighting. Noah remains utterly baffled, his mind reeling from the accidental display of power. Nearby, his familiar lets out a knowing sigh, having understood what happened. It explains that Noah must have let out a bit of his real strength earlier. Noah counters that since monsters are sensitive to magic, some should have still remained. He then realizes the horde wasn't repelled, but fled in terror from his immense aura. As Noah hangs his head in defeat, Rista stands before the village with pride. She declares that the monsters are now too scared to ever approach the village again. Noah panics, realizing she's completely misunderstanding the situation and its cause. Rista then turns and raises her hands to address the waiting crowd. With a flourish, she proudly presents Noah as their mighty protector. The villagers look on in stunned silence, processing her grand statement. From a distance, Noah desperately tries to get everyone to stop. Ignoring him, Rista continues her speech, praising their wonderful new lord and savior. The prince continues to yell for them to wait, his pleas lost in the moment. Rista grabs Noah's hand as the villagers erupt in cheers, pledging to follow him to the death. He slumps in total despair, while his familiar remarks on the lack of sane people. The scene then shifts far away, back to the royal castle in the Giga Kingdom. An advisor rushes through the halls, shouting in disbelief over recent events. He reports to the king that the knight commander has resigned, following the court mage's lead. The advisor explains they all resigned, claiming the palace is worthless without Lord Noah. The advisor tentatively addresses His Majesty, the king. The agitated king wonders if they should consider bringing Lord Noah back. Suddenly, a wine glass shatters violently upon the floor. Leaping from his throne, the king roars, questioning if the advisor dares doubt his judgment. His face contorts with rage as sweat beads on his brow. He turns away, declaring that he cast the incompetent Noah aside and was not mistaken. Just then, a young woman enters the throne room, calling out to His Majesty. She calmly approaches the king, who remains seated with his back to her. Upon turning around, the king recognizes the visitor with a hint of surprise. She is revealed to be Saradias Nefon Graham, the daughter of a Grand Duke. Without hesitation, she continues her advance towards the throne. The king awkwardly apologizes for his unseemly outburst and asks about her sudden visit. With her eyes closed, Saradias respectfully announces her intention to break their engagement. The king reels back in absolute shock, his mouth falling open. He demands an explanation, citing the long-standing relationship between their houses. In response, Saradias calmly clarifies that she is Lord Noah's fiancée. The king argues that since Noah was banished, her new fiancé is now Darva. She responds with a sweet smile, simply stating that she refuses. Utterly stunned, the king can only sputter in disbelief at her rejection. She explains she only accepted the engagement to be with Noah, so there is no reason to proceed. The king shouts her name, but Saradias stares ahead with resolute determination. In a sudden flashback, Darva is seen chasing after her down a long corridor. He desperately tells her to wait, claiming that breaking the engagement is a lie. Without stopping, she states that she belongs to Noah and will never be his. Dorvua reaches out, frantically pleading for her to reconsider her stance. He then recalls how he coveted Saradias, viewing Noah as a mere obstacle. In the present moment of the flashback, he grabs her arm, declaring she is his. Saradias simply turns to face his hopeful expression with a cold, piercing gaze. Pulling her arm free, she says she'd rather die than be defiled by an incompetent brute. Her harsh words cause Dorvua to fall to his knees as she walks away. He furiously slams the ground, screaming about why it's always about Noah. Saradias, however, remains completely unfazed by his outburst. She thinks to herself that his inability to understand proves his incompetence. Returning to the throne room, both the king and Dorvua are utterly speechless. Meanwhile, Noah sprints through a town in a full-blown panic. He recalls banging his head on a desk, complaining about how his plans always backfire. His every attempt to look incompetent only resulted in him solving problems. Frustrated, he screams. His maid Lyra suggests that he should just be honest and admit he can't do things. Dejected, Noah concludes that he is a third-rate failure even at being incompetent. Noah reasons that it's better to fail spectacularly than to just be called useless from the start. As he leaps from the window, Lyra notes that for him, every plan seems to backfire. She then notices a paper he left behind, picking it up and asking what it is. Lyra reads the document, which outlines a village restoration project left by Sebastian. The request details how a labor shortage is preventing repairs, suggesting Noah use his magic. Returning to the present, Noah shouts that he would never do something that creates more work for him. He stops for a moment, however, as a new idea seems to strike him. With a slight grin, he tells Lyra that he might be able to use this situation. Noah announces they are heading out, prompting a confused Lyra to ask if he'll do the job. He turns with a confident smile, declaring that he has a secret plan up his sleeve. Following this, their carriage travels down a secluded path through a forest. Inside, Lyra mentions the massive manpower needed for the village restoration, and Noah agrees. She also observes that the Carter territory they are heading to doesn't seem very wealthy. Concerned, she asks how he can gather people without money or using his magic. Noah panics, exclaiming that asking capable people for help would only improve his reputation. With a knowing look, he then mutters that it should be about time for his plan to unfold. At that exact moment, several armed figures emerge from the bushes and surround the carriage. The carriage lurches to a halt, and Lyra wonders if the magical horse simply ran out of power. Deciding to find out, she announces she will go take a look outside. However, as she opens the door, a woman with a knife tells her not to move. A close-up reveals Noah's hands have been tightly bound with rope. Meanwhile, a group of bandits brandishing their blades proudly identifies themselves to Lyra. She sits on the ground, also tied up, as one man notes she'll fetch a good price. Nearby, Lyra desperately asks Noah for a plan, but he just laughs it off. Stunned by his reaction, Lyra wonders if he somehow orchestrated this. Noah then boldly declares he'll take these men back, calling them useless for any other job. His statement leaves Lyra utterly baffled and speechless. Enraged, the bandits rush forward, demanding to know what nonsense he's spouting. Before they can act, however, one of the men nervously calls out to his leader. He points toward Lyra, exclaiming that she's an absolute stunner. The leader then accuses the noble of forcing such a cute girl to work for a pittance. Lyra is once again left flabbergasted by the direction of the conversation. Deciding they've stolen his money, the bandits also agree to take the girl with them. Suddenly, Lyra yelps in surprise as a hand grabs her from behind. One of the bandits casually throws her over his shoulder to carry her off. Panicking, Lyra asks Noah for a plan, offering to transform and kill them all. As they are led away, Noah tells the bandits to be reasonable and spare his life. He then delivers a single, powerful flick to the lead bandit's forehead. The force of the blow sends a visible shock through the air, stunning both the bandit and Lyra. In the next instant, the bandit and Lyra are both sent flying high into the sky. As the bandit leader plummets, his subordinates cry out from the ground. Before they hit the ground, Noah deftly catches Lyra, pulling her close. Holding her securely, he informs the bandits that he intends to take them with him. Lyra, completely flustered, can only stare up at Noah's face. Noah then loudly questions their motives, comparing them to characters in an adult comic. With a deadpan look, Lyra wonders if everyone here is an idiot. Back on the ground, Noah declares that the farce is over. He then coolly tells them to sit obediently if they wish to live. Outraged, the remaining bandits refuse to back down and charge forward together. In a flash, Noah sends one of the charging men flying with a powerful kick. He then uses the very rope that bound him to trip up two more assailants. Grinning, Noah taunts the downed men while still holding the rope. The other bandits can only watch in utter disbelief and fear. Sometime later, back at the peaceful village estate, all is calm. Inside, a stern-looking steward named Sebastian wonders what's going on. Just then, Noah proudly presents the group of bandits, now all tied up together. With a thumbs up, he cheerfully says he'll do anything as long as he's paid. He then declares that he will personally entrust the village repairs to these men. Hearing this, Sebastian and a nearby maid are completely stunned. Sebastian immediately objects, questioning why they'd trust a shady group with repairs. Noah asks Sebastian if he doubts the men, declaring that he trusts them. While Sebastian silently considers this, Lyra looks at Noah with admiration. Noah smugly states he trusts them not to tarnish his reputation. Behind him, one of the bound bandits begins to weep quietly. Soon, all the men are moved to tears by his surprising show of faith. Noah, however, turns back, completely baffled by their reaction. Their leader cries out that Noah is giving fallen craftsmen a second chance. Both Noah and a surprised Lyra stare, not understanding what's happening. Another bandit explains they only turn to thievery to feed their families. Consequently, their leader, a former guildmaster carpenter, proudly accepts the job. This revelation stuns everyone, and Sebastian suddenly has a realization. He recalls a story about exiled carpenters, wondering if Noah already knew. Energized, the leader rallies his men to pick up their tools once more. With a thunderous cheer, the men raise their fists in unified agreement. Caught up in the excitement, Noah cheers along with them as Lyra looks on. Sebastian reflects on how Noah solved the bandit and labor shortage issues simultaneously. However, he notes that the territory's other problems are not so easily solved. Just then, the large estate gates begin to creak open unexpectedly. A large, covered wagon rumbles past them and through the open gates. A whole caravan of wagons has arrived, with a mysterious figure watching from the front. Noah and Lyra watch in confusion as the caravan approaches. Then, a voice emanates from the lead wagon, apologizing for the sudden intrusion. A woman elegantly steps down, stating she has arrived to offer her assistance. As the mysterious woman fully reveals herself, Noah and his companions stare in disbelief. In a state of utter shock, Noah screams, demanding to know why they are here. Three young women stand before him, with the one in front greeting Lord Noah. Still reeling, Noah points at the group, again demanding an explanation for their presence. Beside him, a curious Lyra turns to Noah, asking who these new arrivals are. Looking visibly flustered, Noah begins to explain his connection to them. He reveals they were all acquaintances from his time spent at the royal castle. One woman, Tata, the former royal knight captain, says she heard Noah became a lord and came to help. While Tata passionately pledges her strength to him, Noah is horrified by this development. Subsequently, the former court magus, Riza, introduces herself as his sworn friend. Noah shouts her name in disbelief, reminding her how much she despises the countryside. As he continues to question her, Riza prepares to give her reason for coming. She shyly admits that it's because he was no longer at the castle. Immediately after, she blushes fiercely, clearly embarrassed by her own honest admission. Riza then frantically claims it was an oracle, prompting Lyra to mutter about another strange person arriving. Meanwhile, the third girl explains she found the other two lost on the road. She concludes by offering Noah a warm and friendly greeting of her own. Noah, sweating nervously, recognizes the third woman as Sarah and questions her presence. In response, Sarah coyly suggests that they were once promised to be married. Noah facepalms in exasperation at the mention of a fiancé, shocking his companions. The butler then panics, realizing the nation's top merchant has come to their domain. An impressed Lyra excitedly exclaims that Lord Noah has so many capable acquaintances. Lyra then cheekily notes how this adds fuel to the capable Lord Noah theory. Subsequently, Noah commands all of them to go home, declaring this is no place for nobles. However, Tata firmly objects, insisting she wants to be useful to him. Riza follows up, vowing not to leave until he formally accepts her as a subordinate. Smiling, Sarah explains that she brought the entire Knight and Magus squads to assist him. With all three women resolved, Noah's cat familiar wonders what he plans to do. Suddenly, Noah declares that they will settle the matter with a duel. Startling his familiar, when Lyra questions his decision, Noah explains that they have no intention of leaving. Because of this, he announces he must simply change his entire way of thinking. He then grins, announcing his plan to use them to show off his incompetent moves. Noah explains to the villagers that the winner of the duel will garner public attention. Meanwhile, Sarah and Riza discuss the fight. Concerned Noah might get hurt mentally or physically. 2 hours later, a makeshift arena has been constructed for the impending duel. Villagers gather and gossip, hearing Noah will fight the Knight and Magus captains. As a crowd forms, Noah's cat wonders why they have nothing better to do with their time. Sarah gracefully steps forward, announcing that she will serve as the referee for the duel. She then lays out the simple rules. They must enter the forest and bring back defeated monsters. Victory, she explains, is determined by the monster's strength and number, with no catches resulting in a draw. Tata, the Knight Captain, grins confidently in response. In contrast, Riza the Magus Captain remains silent and stern. All the while, Noah looks on, completely flustered by the whole affair. With a shout, Sarah officially begins the duel, sending the two captains leaping into action. Noah, however, is distracted, asking his familiar why it's a cat again. Suddenly, a microphone appears as someone prepares to make an announcement. It's Lyra, cheerfully declaring she will provide live commentary for the duel. Noah looks up in shock, spotting Lyra in a tall tower he never requested. Meanwhile, the contestants have already dashed into the forest. Lyra's commentary begins, announcing who made the first move. She reports that Knight Captain Tata has charged ahead into the woods. Tata immediately confronts a massive serpent monster, vowing to fight with all her might. With a powerful cry, she swings her greatsword at the beast. Her strike slices the monster and nearby trees in half, eliciting a roar from the crowd. Watching from a distance, Riza acknowledges Tata's raw power. She then turns her attention to a monstrous beast lurking nearby. The story briefly pauses with a view of the author and artist credits. Riza then declares that it's time to witness the power of a dark magus. Following this, she unleashes a torrent of dark magical energy from her hands. The spell, a refined purgatory fireball, hurtles towards the massive beast. Subsequently, a colossal explosion rocks the entire forest, wiping out the monster. The crowd roars with excitement, amazed by Riza's power and the barrier she casts to protect them. Seeing the others make their moves, Noah decides it's finally his turn to act. From her commentary tower, Lyra excitedly announces that Noah has begun to move. She then asks the audience to behold his magnificent stride as he walks into the woods. Mortified, Noah wonders who in their right mind let Lyra be the commentator. He realizes that with everyone watching, he can't afford to make any incompetent moves. Deciding to just get it over with, Noah leaps off a cliff into a deep ravine. The commentators panic, shouting that they have lost sight of Noah. Meanwhile, Noah stands calmly at the bottom of the ravine, surrounded by monster remains. He contemplates how to appear weak, since victory is decided by monster quantity and strength. Suddenly, he strikes a pose. Deciding his plan is to simply catch a single slime. He wonders where he might find a slime in this so-called forest of demise. Just then, he recalls a certain rumor and gets an idea. Almost immediately, he spots exactly what he was looking for: a small slime. Noah gleefully holds up the squishy, weak-looking slime for all to see. His familiar, however, stares in shock, exclaiming that something is very wrong with that particular slime. The familiar points out that the slime Noah is holding is, in fact, gold. Holding the creature, Noah casually wonders if differently colored slimes existed in his past life. His familiar is left utterly speechless and horrified by this revelation. It then asks Noah for his plan, warning that the slime will just evaporate if attacked. However, Noah simply announces that the slime has already been defeated. He reveals his tactic was instant death magic, allowing him to defeat it without a scratch. The familiar shrieks in terror, realizing instant death magic is a forbidden grand sorcery of darkness. As it insists no one can perform such a feat, Noah calmly states it was a required skill in his previous life. Having grown somewhat accustomed to his master's absurdity, the familiar asks, "What's next?" Since the hunt is over, Noah muses that the others will take a while, so he'll just take a nap. He then promptly lies down on the corpse of a massive beast and goes to sleep. His familiar shivers, marveling at how incredible Noah is for taking a nap in the dreaded forest of demise. Several hours pass under the daytime sky. With a burst of speed, someone emerges from the forest. Noah casually jogs out from the tree line, spotted by his maid from afar. Startled, Rista gasps with a blush as she sees him emerge. At the sight of him, the crowd erupts into thunderous cheers. Shouting for Lord Noah, Rista rushes over in a fluster, exclaiming how worried she was, while Noah apologizes for alarming her. He then explains with a smile that he had a tough battle with a monster, which took some time. Meanwhile, the familiar on his shoulder internally mocks his excuse of a tough fight with a single slime. Looking back towards the trees, Noah idly wonders if Theta and Leysa have returned yet. At that moment, the two appear, standing triumphantly over a pile of slain monsters. Theta proudly announces her kill count of 15, while Leysa boasts of defeating 5,500. Horrified, the familiar screeches that they casually defeated SS rank ancient dragons. An official then approaches Noah, requesting to see the monster he managed to fell. With a self-assured smirk, Noah crosses his arms and prepares to present his catch. He then reveals his prize, a single, shimmering slime, which he calls this guy. The entire crowd, including Rista, stares in absolute, stunned silence at the creature. Everyone gathers around the pedestal, murmuring in confusion about the underwhelming prize. Noah inwardly celebrates, believing his plan to appear weak has succeeded perfectly. However, the onlookers begin to notice that for a simple slime, it's unusually radiant. A wave of confused chatter spreads through the crowd as they examine the glittering monster. Suddenly, the official holds up a hand, asking for silence as she inspects the slime. She identifies the creature as the legendary Slime King, the King of Gluttony. Upon hearing this, the crowd erupts, recognizing the legendary monster by its unique glow. Leysa remarks that this one king could have swallowed all the monsters they hunted combined. The official joyfully grabs Noah's arm, declaring him the winner in the name of the Duke. All of Noah's plans are dashed as he looks on in utter despair, wondering why. Meanwhile, Rista's eyes sparkle with admiration for her master's incredible might. The entire crowd roars with excitement, cheering wildly for the astounding Lord Noah. Noah despairs over his failed plan, while his cat familiar smugly notes the expected outcome. Sometime later, life goes on as usual at the Lord of Carter's mansion. Inside, Rista is seen diligently cleaning the estate. While wiping a window, she pauses to smile warmly at someone outside. Elsewhere, Theta, Leysa, and two knights stand assembled and ready. Another subordinate, a researcher, pores over books in her study. Meanwhile, Noah himself dozes off at his desk with a book in hand. His cat familiar opens an eye, remarking how lively things have become. The scene then shifts to a flashback, focusing on the napping cat. The narrator recalls their first meeting with Noah, before he was known as Incompetent. This meeting took place in the legendary Forbidden Archive, a repository of all knowledge. Within its ruins, the White Dragon Ruli had been guarding the location alone for ages. As it slept, its eye suddenly snaps open. At that very moment, a young Noah appears in a flash of light. He looks up at the massive bookshelves, wondering if he's in a library. The boy silently takes in the ancient and vast surroundings. Suddenly, Noah finds himself standing before the enormous, newly awakened dragon. Identified as a 6-year-old, Noah smiles and comments on the dragon's size. The beast looks on in utter shock, unable to believe a child is in its sacred archive. Spreading its majestic wings, the dragon aggressively demands to know who the boy is. The dragon wonders what kind of being Noah is, concluding he's nothing more than an intruder. Following this thought, Ruli declares its intent to eliminate the intruder, its mouth agape. It then gathers a massive amount of energy in its jaws. Declaring it is its sacred duty, the beast prepares to unleash its power upon the boy. Subsequently, a powerful beam of destructive magic is fired from its mouth. The blast rips through the archive, sending books and debris flying everywhere. Tomes and loose pages are seen being obliterated by the intense magical force. Everything in the attack's path is instantly disintegrated into dust and particles. Once the dust settles, Ruli explains its nature as a demon god with super regenerative powers. However, Noah stands completely unharmed, merely complaining about dust getting in his mouth. The dragon is left utterly speechless and confused by this outcome. In disbelief, it questions why the boy could so calmly withstand its ultimate magic. Noah stands calmly on a fallen log, facing the bewildered dragon. He nonchalantly remarks that its magic is unusual, a mix of creation and destruction. Raising his finger, the young prince then decides to show the dragon something. A small wisp of similar energy forms at his fingertip as he asks if this is what it meant. The dragon recoils in shock as Noah dismisses its power as a simple trick. Furious and flustered, Ruli again demands to know the boy's identity. Noah simply smirks, pointing out its proper etiquette to introduce oneself first. Completely taken aback, the dragon asks if the child feels no fear towards it. Noah calmly explains he just showed the dragon its own magic, asking what's so scary about it. The dragon's eye widens, completely stunned by the prince's nonchalant attitude. It recalls its past, stating that before guarding this library, it was a god feared by humans. The beast elaborates that people would only ever fear or shun it. Noah smiles brightly, remarking that this is the first time anyone has ever looked at it so directly. Spreading its wings, the creature formally introduces itself as Ruli, the demon god guarding this place. Following suit, the young boy announces that he is Noah, the seventh prince. Ruli stammers, asking how he arrived, and Noah replies that he was just taking a break. He then explains he found and broke through a spatial distortion while exploring the castle. The dragon internally notes that while possible, any normal human should have died from such an act. Noah's gaze is then suddenly captivated by the towering bookshelves. He excitedly runs towards them, marveling at the vast collection of rare books. With a cheerful expression, the prince eagerly pulls a tome from a shelf. Enraged, Ruli roars at the boy, telling him not to touch the sacred books with his filthy hands. The dragon suddenly realizes it almost forgot its primary mission. Hovering above the ground, it rededicates itself to protecting this land as a demon god. Once more, Ruli unleashes a massive energy blast, declaring it will eliminate this person. Noah effortlessly leaps across the bookshelves, avoiding the destructive beam. He lands gracefully as more dark energy spikes crash down around him. Ruli trembles, utterly astounded by the boy's ability to evade its attacks. Noah calmly stands among swirling tendrils of wood, having used them to protect the book. The tome is now safely encased within a solid sphere of interlaced wood. He looks over with relief, wondering aloud if the precious book was damaged. Ruli shouts from above that the books have magical protection, telling him to worry for himself. Noah smirks, understanding now that the books are indeed magically protected. He then happily declares that this means he can go all out without holding back. With a shout, Noah shatters the wooden construct he just created, releasing a burst of energy. Ruli stares in disbelief, utterly flabbergasted by the prince's sudden show of power. Meanwhile, the dragon's dark energy attacks slam against the bookshelves, but are repelled by a barrier. Noah stands before the shelves, effortlessly redirecting the explosive dark magic away from them. The demon god realizes in horror that Noah is using the library's own protection magic. Noah calmly states that he has no intention of ever damaging the books. Announcing that it's time to end things, a massive sealing circle appears behind the dragon. Ruli can only gasp in shock at the sudden appearance of the overwhelmingly complex spell. The prince reaches out, casually apologizing for what he is about to do. He then grins, warning the demon god not to interfere with his quiet life. Multiple layers of the sealing magic circle slam shut, trapping Ruli within their light. In a flash of light, the massive dragon disappears from its spot before the shelves. Where the beast once stood, a bewildered cat-eared girl now sits amidst the dust and rubble. She looks around in a panicked rage, screaming out in utter confusion. Ruli panics, clutching her head as she shouts about her shrunken body. Noah holds up a book, calmly explaining that he sealed her power inside it. Stunned, Ruli demands to know what he is to have sealed a demon god's power. The prince simply smirks down at the book, reminding her he already told her. He then confidently introduces himself as Noah, the seventh prince, holding the book. Sometime later, Noah casually returns to the Forbidden Library with a cheerful greeting. Ruli glares down from a bookshelf, annoyed, asking why he has come back. She then reminds him that ordinary people are not allowed in this place. Noah happily explains he can use teleportation magic, much to Ruli's surprise. He begins to flip through a manga, getting engrossed in the story. Sitting on the floor, Noah exclaims that the manga is incredibly entertaining. Ruli excitedly adds that the library's vast collection even includes doujinshi. She then mutters to herself, still finding it hard to believe he's only here for manga. Suddenly, Noah calls out to her, saying her name. Ruli, he smiles warmly, asking if she has any manga recommendations for him. Ruli's eyes light up with excitement as she happily offers several suggestions. Noah gratefully accepts a massive stack of books from her, saying, "Thank you." With a bright smile, he happily declares that he'll be borrowing them. Carrying the stack, he waves goodbye as he steps into a glowing portal. A slightly flustered Ruli waves back, whispering a farewell as he vanishes. Ruli blushes, thinking to herself that he will come again. She reflects on her formal speech, realizing it clashes with her current form. The next day, Ruli panics, pointing out that Noah has smudged one of her manga. He is caught snacking while reading, leading to a scolding from Ruli. Noah apologizes, then uses magic to instantly clean the book, much to her surprise. The two of them continue spending time together in the vast library. As Noah weeps over a touching manga, Ruli reads alongside him, agreeing with his sentiment. He praises her manga taste, and she shyly recommends another book. However, they soon break into a heated argument over their differing opinions. Noah passionately defends his choice, insisting another manga is the author's masterpiece. In response, Ruli scoffs, claiming Noah's taste is simply awful. He then challenges her to reveal her own top picks. Certain his are superior. Ruli confidently presents her favorite volumes, leaving Noah speechless at her selections. Defeated, Noah admits her choices are undeniably powerful. While Ruli boasts victoriously, the debate continues as they float among the shelves, each insisting their taste is better. More days pass peacefully as they enjoy their shared hobby. Eventually, Noah announces that it is time for him to return home. Hearing this, Ruli looks up with a hint of sadness in her eyes. Noticing her expression, Noah asks what's wrong, but she quickly dismisses it. Hesitantly, she then shyly asks if he could stay just a little longer. Noah explains he must leave soon, or his sister Machen will worry. Hearing this, a dejected Ruli can only mutter, "I see." Sensing her disappointment, Noah turns to her and calls her name. He then gestures to the outside world and asks if she wants to go with him. With a charming smile, Noah extends his hand, inviting her to leave the library. Ruli, however, looks up at him with a nervous and flustered expression. She immediately refuses, declaring that it's impossible because she's the guardian. Noah points out that no magic binds her, and he's the only one who can even visit. He then asks what the point is of guarding this place completely alone. Her thoughts drift to the outside world as she clutches her chest anxiously. Deep down, she admits to herself that she is simply afraid. A flashback reveals her past as a giant dragon, once revered by humans. However, that worship eventually turned into fear and then outright hostility. She recalls running away, terrified of people and the pain of their rejection. Because of this, she was relieved to become the library's guardian, safe from those memories. She had resolved to never go outside again, to a place where humans could hurt her. Bringing her back to the present, Noah gently interrupts her thoughts, asking how she feels now. Ruli looks up, completely startled by his simple yet profound question. Her eyes widen in shock as she struggles to find an answer. A wave of realization washes over her, leaving her trembling in stunned silence. Suddenly, Ruli erupts, screaming at him to shut up. She then turns and flees, yelling that a mere human shouldn't get so carried away. Furthermore, she declares herself a demon god, the strongest created by the goddess. She warns Noah not to act as if he could ever possibly understand her. Pointing angrily, Ruli shouts that she hates him and demands that he leave. Through tears, she then forbids him from ever returning to the Forbidden Library. However, her inner thoughts reveal that's not what she truly wanted to say. Accepting her words, Noah simply turns away as a portal begins to open behind him. Ruli watches in shock, realizing he is actually leaving. Her hand twitches as she inwardly panics, knowing this is all wrong. Tears well up in her eyes as she questions her own confusing actions. Following that incident, Noah stops visiting the Forbidden Library entirely. Once again, a profound silence falls over the endless rows of books. Ruli finds herself completely alone, sitting amongst piles of books on the floor. Time passes slowly as she is consumed by loneliness and deep regret. Sometime later, her sharp ears suddenly twitch upon hearing a sound. Startled, she senses another presence and wonders if it could be Noah. Filled with sudden hope, she breaks into a run, certain that he has returned for her. As she runs, she decides she will apologize and finally go outside with him. She bursts through an opening between the bookshelves into a sunlit clearing. Her face lights up, believing Noah has finally come back for her. However, she instead finds a strange, tentacled figure in a robe holding a book. The creature mutters aloud, identifying the location as the Forbidden Library. With arms outstretched, it declares its intention to claim the world's wisdom for itself. A startled Ruli confronts the intruder, demanding to know who it is. The robed figure turns and asks if she is the library's guardian. It then calls her foolish for not noticing the library's seal was weakening. Panic flashes across Ruli's face as she realizes her own sealed state allowed this intrusion. The intruder scoffs, questioning how she could possibly guard the library like this. Angrily, Ruli shouts at the monster to get away from the books. The creature retorts that she, the incompetent guardian, should be the one to leave. Without warning, its tentacles shoot out, wrapping around a stunned Ruli. It lifts her high into the air as she struggles and demands to be released. Her captor tells her to just watch as it makes the library's knowledge its own. Powerless, Ruli seethes, wishing she wasn't sealed at a time like this. Suddenly, her eyes widen in horror at what she sees. As the intruder reaches for a book, she screams for it to stop. The creature picks up the volume, inspecting the cover and identifying it as a manga. It then becomes enraged, yelling that a manga is not true wisdom. Ruli retorts that only stupid kids would read something like that anyway. The intruder proclaims it wants powerful books, not something as worthless as manga. Ruli begins to quietly retort that it's not worthless. Hearing her mutter, the creature turns and asks what she said. She passionately declares that manga is the greatest book for entertaining people. She thinks back on her lonely days, finding solace in manga and novels. With tears in her eyes, she screams for it to apologize to manga and its creators. The creature is stunned into silence by her fervent outburst. Enraged, it unleashes its power and asks if she wants to be killed. Its tentacles tighten their grip, painfully crushing Ruli. The immense pressure constricts her body even further. As the tentacles dig into her, she continues to struggle in its grasp. Barely able to speak, she calls out for Noah to help her. The monster ignores her plea and snarls for her to die. Suddenly, a swift slicing sound cuts through the air. Noah appears in a flash, severing a tentacle and telling the beast to die. The sliced limb falls away from the creature's body. As the monster recoils in pain, Noah calmly confronts it. Baffled, the intruder wonders how he got into the Forbidden Library. Noah simply explains that he used teleportation magic to enter. The monster sputters in disbelief, claiming no such magic exists before disintegrating. As the monster vanishes, Noah catches Ruli and asks if she is okay. Standing in the now quiet library, she asks if he came just to save her. Noah looks at a manga explaining he just wanted to read the next volume. Blushing, Ruli earnestly insists that manga is a great literary medium. Seeing her intense reaction, Noah asks what has gotten into her. Suddenly, she lunges forward and wraps her arms around him in a tight hug. Crying, she confesses she thought he would never come back after they parted. He gently pats her head, reassuring her that would never happen. Following that, Noah explains he was simply away on a family trip. He admits he had to stop reading for appearances. Then remembers something. Getting her attention, he tells Ruli to turn and face him. With a charming smile, Noah magically conjures a ribbon from thin air. He says he bought it because he thought it would suit her, attaching it to her uniform. Ruli looks down at the new bow on her chest, calling it a souvenir. Noah then smiles warmly and thanks her for protecting the manga. Tears well up in Ruli's eyes, touched by his kindness and the gift. Overcome with emotion, she pulls him into yet another heartfelt hug. With newfound determination, she looks at him and vows to follow him. Noah gives her a bright, happy smile and agrees to her pledge. He then suggests creating a barrier and alarm to prevent any future intruders. Ruli hesitantly asks if it's really okay for her to accompany him. Noah replies that she taught him how interesting manga is, and he wants to learn more. With a confident grin, he offers to teach her something equally entertaining in return. She happily accepts as Noah leads her through a newly created magic portal. Sometime later, while Noah relaxes with a book, someone urgently shouts his name. Ruli bursts through the door, announcing the discovery of an ore vein in his territory. A flustered Noah complains, wondering why this is happening since he hasn't done anything. Ruli explains it's a delayed result of a fireball he once shot at a red bear. His cat familiar, meanwhile, smugly comments on its master's typical foolishness. The cat's jeweled bow gleams as it looks on. Noah reflects on learning more as the scene pans over his grand estate. Ruli then recaps how Noah's accidental fireball led to a major discovery. With stars in her eyes, she announces a huge mithril deposit has been found. Noah shouts in disbelief, still confused as to how he caused this. His familiar notes that mithril is a luxury good that will sell for an incredible sum. Suddenly, Sebastian the butler bursts in, declaring that he has heard the news. He dramatically explains this is a godsend, as the territory's funds were almost depleted. Hearing this, Noah asks why so many people have been flocking to their lands. As Sebastian begins to explain, with tears in his eyes, the cat points toward him. He reveals it's because rumors of Noah's believers have been spreading throughout the domain. Ruli cheerfully explains the prophet spreading his praise is someone named Restart. Sebastian adds in a panic that their territory is now ranked number 1, solving all their financial issues. Noah, however, turns to his butler and says, "But," as a plan begins to form, putting on a fake mustache. Sebastian insists this feat is not Noah's doing. In response, Noah desperately clings to him, crying that Sebastian is his only ally. Sebastian tells Noah to keep quiet about the ore vein, and the cat asks why it's a secret. A girl named Sarah then appears, claiming she can multiply the mithril's value as a merchant's daughter. Realizing this is bad, Noah worries while his cat notes getting rich would ruin his act. The cat asks if keeping it a secret is possible, and Noah agrees the mithril needs to be handled soon. Once again, Noah pleads with Sebastian, who calmly asks what he wants. With a dark grin, Noah instructs him to summon the merchant with the worst reputation in the kingdom. Several days later, a massive carriage wheel is seen rumbling toward the estate. The huge carriage continues its approach, drawing closer to the mansion. Watching from a window, Noah smirks as he announces their arrival. His familiar comments that the domain is now getting a lot of attention, all thanks to him. Noah explains that with the mithril discovery, villains will surely try to swindle them. The cat panics, realizing a scam would ruin Noah's reputation and brand him incompetent. Noah then calmly clarifies that's exactly why he summoned the country's most disreputable merchant. With a confident smirk, he declares he will assess them himself, trusting his own eyes. His familiar looks on peacefully, wondering what its master sees with those unclouded eyes. A door to the room creaks open, where Sebastian announces he has brought the merchant Noah requested. The butler then cautions Noah that this person's appearance is quite shocking. Noah looks on, wondering what could possibly be so shocking. From beneath a ragged hood, a figure begins to speak, revealing a goblin who introduces himself as Sabrina Echegoya. Sebastian watches the prince's reaction with a tense, sweating expression. Likewise, the maid Ruli stares with wide-eyed shock. Noah and his familiar both exclaim in utter disbelief at the sight of a goblin. Following this, Sebastian explains that Echegoya best fit the request for a disreputable merchant. The cat then wonders why a monster is working as a merchant in the first place. A slight smile forms on Noah's face as he simply says, "Good." With an ecstatic grin, Noah points at the goblin and shouts, "You're hired!" Everyone, including the goblin himself, is flabbergasted by the sudden decision. Noah gets close, explaining he loves the name because it sounds incredibly villainous. When his familiar objects, Noah reminds the cat that it's a dragon. He calmly declares that appearance is irrelevant compared to a person's skill. Hearing this, the goblin merchant looks up, touched by the prince's words. A brief moment of silence falls over the entire group. Suddenly, tears begin to pour from Echegoya's eyes as he starts to sob. Noah looks down at the crying goblin, asking, "What is the matter?" Through his tears, Echegoya explains that no one has ever been so kind to him in this form. Noah smiles warmly, saying that it must have been tough for him. Echegoya rises, vowing to do his best for his kind master, to which Noah replies he is expecting failure. As the moment concludes, Noah's familiar suddenly realizes something. Noah then pulls out a necklace, calling it a token of their friendship. The goblin merchant gratefully accepts the gift, bowing his head in thanks. When the cat asks what he just gave away, Noah replies that it's just an anti-evil charm. He then warns Echegoya not to get into trouble, lest adventurers ruin his plans. His familiar stares suspiciously, pondering what Noah truly handed over. Echegoya, meanwhile, examines the gift and recognizes it as a top-grade holy relic. A few days later at the mansion, Noah's familiar is in a complete panic. Stepping into a room, Noah is stunned to find it overflowing with vast piles of gold coins. Sebastian reports these are sales from Echegoya's mithril silver deal, prompting Noah to yell for him. The butler, however, hesitates for a moment before speaking. He explains Echegoya has arrived, revealing a cute adventurer who introduces themselves as Sabrina Echegoya. A massive shout of disbelief echoes out from the mansion. The familiar points out that this person's appearance is completely different from before. The new Echegoya smiles sheepishly, admitting their explanation is a bit late. Echegoya explains that wearing Noah's necklace healed their cursed body, transforming their appearance. As the scene transitions, and Noah shouts in disbelief, finally understanding that Echegoya had been cursed, who then recounts being ostracized and transformed by a rival merchant's plot. And with tears in their eyes, they praise Noah for seeing past their looks and breaking the spell, now happily offering to help develop the domain as head of the Silver Hair Merchant Guild, a name which makes Sebastian gasp in shock, prompting Noah to ask his butler if he recognizes it. Whereupon Sebastian explains it's a world-famous guild whose leader had vanished, before bowing in astonishment, realizing Sabrina Echegoya is that very leader, which causes Noah to collapse in despair over gaining such a prominent ally. But he then stands up with a shadowed expression, muttering how splendid it all is. While elsewhere, a maid named Lista marvels at Noah's kindness for breaking the curse, then rallies a massive crowd, declaring his deeds must become a holy scripture, inspiring another enthusiastic follower who wishes to help spread This news sends Noah recoiling in absolute horror, as a voice screams in frustration over the domain's situation amidst piles of gold, followed by the smiling maid, who declares it is now her turn. And the scene shifts to the depths of the Forest of Nara, where strange crystalline structures jut out from the ground. The scene shifts to the imposing demon kingdom of Karaunosutia, where a horned figure kneels before a ruler in a vast throne room, who is currently examining a crude flyer about the new lord, Noakart, and then asks their subordinate how to handle the situation, just as a young demon girl appears on the throne, greeting the demon lord. Meanwhile, back at Noah's estate late at night, a small white cat walks down a hall toward a brightly lit room, curious about the light being on at such an hour, and upon peeking in, it hears confirmation that Noah is asleep, causing a nervous maid named Lista to clasp her hands together. before she declares the start of an emergency meeting to support Master Noah, drawing a faint smile from one of the attendees, while another beams with absolute adoration, and Sabrina Ichigoya smirks knowingly under her hat, as Lista herself looks on with a pleased expression. However, the eavesdropping cat realizes with horror that it's a gathering of fanatics, just as a maid reports that Noah has been shut in his room for a full week, which causes the cat to have a sudden realization, recalling Noah's vow to become a shut-in so he would stop causing trouble, at which point Sabrina chuckles, calling the others foolish for misunderstanding their master's thinking. Ryza angrily confronts Sabrina, claiming she can't possibly know Noah's thoughts, and then grabs her by the collar, demanding a better explanation. But Sarah calmly states that she alone seems to understand their master, clasping her hands together as she prepares to reveal Noah's true intention, which is to think about the future of the entire territory, she says serenely, causing the other maids to gasp in wide-eyed astonishment at the revelation, while the eavesdropping cat smirks, knowing that's not it at all. After which Lista asks Sarah what the territory's greatest problem is, explaining that the land is constantly threatened by the neighboring demon kingdom of Karaunosutia, and Sarah theorizes that Noah must be planning a massive operation to secure peace, which prompts another maid to have a sudden, dramatic realization, slamming her hand down as she announces what this means Noah is planning, which is to subjugate the demon king himself, she declares with fiery determination, and Sarah softly confirms that this is exactly correct, leading the others to praise Noah's incredible kindness and foresight. However, the cat thinks they are all fools for not knowing the demon king is long gone, at which point a maid asks why Noah would remain a shut-in if he could beat the demon king, with Sarah agreeing, wondering why he doesn't just attack the demon kingdom with his power. Suddenly, Lista's face lights up as she excitedly claims she has figured it out, prompting a skeptical look from another maid who questions her sudden insight. Lista explains if Noah were to attack the demon kingdom alone, the territory would be left defenseless, which prompts the other maids to shout in agreement at her realization, as Sarah sorrowfully adds that protecting the territory and defeating the demon king presents a dilemma, followed by a hand clenching into a fist in frustration, inspiring Raiza and another maid to vow they will protect the people and the land. Meanwhile, a shadowy figure laments being called a burden, leading to a sudden clash between the maids as sparks fly, and they argue over who is most useful to Noah, with one claiming a mage is what he seeks. Subsequently, Sarah puts a finger to her chin, understanding that this must be Noah's true intention, leaving the other maids to look at her in utter confusion, and she reveals that Noah was waiting for the citizens to become motivated on their own, declaring he's waiting for them to become strong enough to defend Carter so he can depart. Upon hearing this, the maids are moved to tears, while the eavesdropping cat calls them all idiots. One maid winks, impressed by Noah's incredibly deep thinking, while another resolves to live up to her new master's expectations. Then, a different maid cheers with determination, saying the citizens will unite and do their best. And Sarah clutches her chest, vowing to do it all for the respectable Noah. After which, all the maids join hands, united in their new goal. The cat, however, panics, realizing the situation has gotten completely out of hand, so it immediately dashes down the hallway, intent on telling Noah everything. The cat runs frantically, shouting that the citizens are running wild and he must hurry. But Noah, hugging a pillow in bed, yells that he's decided to do nothing, which causes the cat to recoil in absolute frustration. And from outside the mansion, it shouts that it doesn't care what happens anymore, leading to a time skip of several days, after which Noah and his cat stare in abject horror as someone bows deeply before them, tears dripping onto the floor, revealed to be the stuttering young demon lord, Hildegard, sending Noah into a state of complete and utter shock as he demands to know why the crying demon lord is prostrating herself before him, and she looks up, utterly confused about what is happening. The scene then flashes back to outside Noah's mansion, replaying Noah's shocked reaction to the bowing demon lord, before shifting to several hours prior in the demon kingdom of Karaunostia, where a subordinate reports that Noah has acquired the Knight Commander and Mage Commander, and that spies sent to his mansion return too traumatized to function, leading the subordinate to clench his fist. Certain of his conclusion, he then declares that Noah is preparing to destroy the demon kingdom, to which a stunned Hildegard simply responds, "Is that so?" Suddenly, Hildegard's face contorts in pure terror as tears well up in her eyes. Overwhelmed with despair, Hildegard wails that her kingdom will surely be destroyed. And as her subordinate tries to calm her, she cries that she's quitting as Demon Lord, leading him to urgently plead for her to pull herself together. But she interrupts, stating coldly that since her father is gone, she is the one who is now the Demon Lord, though no one listens to her, prompting her attendant to utter her name with deep concern. Standing alone in the vast hall, Hildegard admits that she is weak, explaining that she is a mix of human and demon blood. A flashback then reveals she inherited the throne only to be scorned by older demons, and in the present, Noah listens to her tale with a shocked expression. Hildegard wonders aloud if the demons would unite behind her if she were pure-blooded. Her subordinate, however, insists that the demon race has never been a monolith. She replies that while she may hate conflict, the powerless don't share that sentiment. Tears welling up again, she nervously asks what would happen if she challenged Noah. The subordinate grimly states that she would undoubtedly be killed with a single finger, which causes Hildegard's eyes to swirl with abject horror. Shaking from head to toe, she cries out that she's scared and doesn't want to die. However, a single word signals a sudden change in her resolve. Because if she does nothing, many demons will be sacrificed, shaming her late father. With a tearful but determined smile, she decides her life is a small price to pay to save them. Her attendant, a large skull-headed demon, listens in stunned silence, then commends her for being so magnificent despite the cruel burden placed upon her. And a brief flashback shows Hildegard as a child, who calls out, asking who is there, as she stands alone in a desolate landscape, pleading for someone to save her, which snaps back to the present day where she is bowing low on the floor, causing Noah to completely panic, shouting about why the Demon Lord is in his room, and demanding to know who let this cosplaying child into his quarters. So Hildegard tearfully begs him to halt the invasion of her kingdom, explaining that countless innocent demons will be swept up in the conflict. But Noah is completely bewildered, wondering what she means by an invasion, leading her subordinate to tell her that her secret pleading is useless, as he notes that the long war between humans and demons cannot simply end with surrender. To which Noah's familiar retorts that such thinking is a thing of the past. So Hildegard changes tactics, offering her own life to the prince, and begging him to do as he pleases with her in exchange for saving her people, which causes Noah to stare back at her with a serious expression. But he then breaks the tension, commenting on how pitiful she seems, while she buries her face in her hands, sobbing that all she desires is peace, prompting a thoughtful Noah to stand with his arms crossed in contemplation. Suddenly, Noah points forward with his index finger, causing Hildegard to flinch in terror as his hand approaches her face. But he instead kneels and gently places his hand on her head, saying he feels the same way, as he smiles warmly, telling her he has no need for a child's life, which leaves the young demon lord completely stunned and speechless. So Noah dismissively declares that he forgives her and will not wage war, then adds that he will personally protect her people's peace, making Hildegard gasp in disbelief, asking if he will truly protect the entire demon race, while his familiar warns him not to say anything unnecessary. And a blushing Hildegard declares him a deeply compassionate person, prompting a frantic Noah to try and backpedal on his promise. But just then, the door to his chamber bursts open, revealing his maid Lista, who is sparkling with admiration for her master, while she muses about how he was moved to help the Demon Lord's people, leading a panicking Noah to ask his familiar why it didn't tell him she was the real Demon Lord. And in her overwhelming joy, Hildegard suddenly leaps forward to hug him. Meanwhile, his familiar remarks that the Demon Lord has become a believer in Noahism, when the door is suddenly smashed open once more, as Hildegard's huge, skull-headed attendant bursts into the room in a rage, and he barrels forward, yelling his lady's name in concern. Hildegard questions her attendant, who introduces himself while Noah coolly stands by, and the skull-headed demon apologetically admits he couldn't stop them, explaining that extremist demons rose up after hearing of her surrender to humans, as a vast army of monsters is shown descending upon the Carter territory. Meanwhile, back inside the room, Lista calmly faces the unfolding chaos, when suddenly, Noah's eyes narrow as he senses an imminent danger, and in the next instant, a massive, clawed hand smashes through the wall in a fiery explosion, sending smoke and debris billowing through the opulent chamber. However, Noah effortlessly conjures a magic circle, shielding everyone from the powerful attack, while he mutters in annoyance about people constantly barging into his house. Then, as the dust settles, they see a winged figure floating outside the wreckage, who formally introduces himself to the group as a demon named Outside, at which point Hildegard asks her master why he is here, surprising Noah, and she explains that he is the central figure of the extremist demon faction, further revealing that he is a powerful, special-class demon, which makes a weary Noah reconfirm with his familiar that Hildegard is really the demon lord, before he casually addresses the intruder, asking what business the demons have. To this, Outside sternly replies that he heard a human had abducted the demon lord, and he then demands that Noah return her, accusing him of taking her hostage, which only causes the unimpressed prince to close his eyes and address the demon with disdain. Noah states he can tell the demon isn't being truthful, as his familiar smells lies, causing Outside to recoil in shock, realizing his mind has been read. However, Noah casually tells a surprised Hildegard he just knew from the atmosphere, then turns his back, complaining about being disturbed after days of lazing around. In response, Outside decides to quickly state his true intentions, and demands that the entire Carter territory be handed over to the demons, leaving both Noah and Lista completely stunned by the outrageous request, as Outside declares with open arms that this is the demon race's true will, further explaining that they require a foothold now that the hero's barrier is gone. While the cat familiar quietly observes that Noah himself broke that very barrier, meanwhile, a furious Hildegard confronts Outside, vowing she will not forgive this, but he cuts her off, sharply telling her to be silent, dismissing her as a mere child who inherited the throne without his consent, prompting Noah to sigh over the seemingly complex politics of the demon realm. So he gets straight to the point, asking if Outside wants to make a deal, to which Outside laughs, saying Noah has no right to refuse, as he reveals that 10,000 high-class demons are already deployed in every village, and with his familiar panicking, wondering what they'll do against such a force. Noah lets out a tense breath, seemingly trapped by the situation, before suddenly breaking into a cheerful smile and giving a thumbs up, readily agreeing. Hildegard looks on in absolute wide-eyed shock at Noah's response, while his cat familiar is similarly flabbergasted, its jaw hanging open, and even Outside the demon is left utterly speechless, as the familiar frantically asks why he'd give up the territory, to which Noah says they'll just join them, prompting the familiar to realize Noah must be targeting someone on the demon's side. Then, Noah gleefully announces that if he hands over the land, he can finally retire. But when his familiar asks about the citizens, Noah casually states they can just escape, after which he sits on some rubble, acknowledging Outside wants his land as a foothold, before smiling and nonchalantly asking, "So what?" leaving a confused Outside to stammer, asking what he means by that. So Noah explains he wants to know what they're offering him in return, a counterproposal that catches Outside completely off guard, as Noah argues that any transaction should be a win-win situation, causing his familiar to panic, thinking Noah will give the territory to an amateur. But he's told to wait, because Noah reveals his true intention is to negotiate with a high-class demon, subsequently telling Outside to go home and bring a superior who can actually talk. And when reminded of the 10,000 demons, Noah mockingly calls it a welcome party for Hildegard, which makes a single drop of sweat run down Outside's masked face, as the familiar gasps, suddenly understanding Noah's true meaning. Finally, Noah questions how someone as weak as Outside could possibly be the demon lord. Hildegard looks on, completely bewildered by Noah's nonchalant attitude, as outside, the masked demon stares intently at the scene from afar, leading Noah's familiar to shout that he's completely misunderstood the situation, and that his actions will surely provoke an all-out war with the demon forces. From his position, outside wonders aloud why Noah shows no concern for his citizens, to which Noah nervously replies that his people aren't cute, they're terrifying, an answer that makes outside chuckle, stating he's never been so mocked. With that, he raises a crystal ball and gives the order to destroy the entire territory. He laughs maniacally while levitating, declaring that Noah's land is now finished. Just as he warns Noah to regret underestimating him, he is struck by a sudden burst of energy. The image in his communication crystal cuts to static as his subordinate calls out his name. Elsewhere, Outside's superior asks through another crystal if the humans have been finished off. The subordinate on the other end begins to stammer, unable to give a clear answer. He then reports that their entire army of 10,000 has been completely annihilated. This startling news leaves the superior demon utterly speechless. The subordinate continues, explaining that as they followed orders to surround the territory, they were met by the knights and mages who were lying in wait. However, they were ultimately repelled and defeated by unexpectedly strong ordinary citizens. Hearing this, Noah shouts that it's impossible, but his familiar reminds him of his own words. He then collapses in despair, while his familiar states he already reported that the citizens were well trained. As Outside levitates menacingly, Noah's familiar shouts that negotiations are now impossible. Meanwhile, the demon superior clenches his fist and menacingly utters Noah Carter's name. He then points forward, declaring that this entire affair was a trap orchestrated by Noah. From another location, the real Noah vows that the demon will not be forgiven. With that, he fires a massive energy blast, striking the demon superior as he screams Noah's name. Looking completely fed up, Noah follows through with a powerful punch. His fist makes contact with the demon superior's face in a brutal impact. Shouting about what a pain this all is, he sends his full force into the blow. The demon is sent crashing to the ground, shocking both Hildegard and the familiar. Consequently, the demon superior is left lying motionless in a pile of rubble. The Noah, who had been watching, suddenly looks up in surprise. He sees his other self standing victoriously over the defeated demon. Panicking, he clutches his head, realizing it was a one-punch counter knockout. He then begins to frantically explain the mechanics of a counterattack to his familiar. Despite the devastating blow, the demon superior slowly starts to stir. Struggling to his feet amidst the wreckage, he calls Noah Carter a monster. Suddenly, a voice from a communication crystal asks if that was the demon boss. The people on the crystal then begin cheering, praising their lord for defeating the enemy. A nervous Noah turns to his familiar, completely confused about the current situation. He then realizes with horror that everyone believes he is an amazing lord who saw through the demon's plot. Completely bewildered, Noah yells at Hildegard about what's happening. She then murmurs that the radical demon faction will likely not be swayed by force. In a flash, she suddenly lunges forward. She throws her arms around a startled Noah, pulling him into a tight embrace. With a grateful expression, she thanks him and pledges her clan's loyalty to his domain. As Noah looks utterly shocked, his familiar comments on how he seems like a monster. He curses under his breath, realizing he is once again being swept up by events. Suddenly, a maid with a wide, unsettling grin appears, startling another attendant. The maid cheerfully suggests ending the war, while a frantic Noah begs her to be quiet. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the crowd continues to cheer, hailing Noah as a hero. Back in his office, Noah weeps over his massive workload, begging for help. His maid snaps back, asking who he's calling names and blaming him for recruiting more demons. She argues that his competent subordinates are the ones doing all the work anyway. At that moment, Hildegard peeks into the office, stating she needs to consult with him. Noah complains about how even Hildegard has become his burden, as his familiar calls it, self-inflicted. Nervously clutching her skirt, Hildegard apologizes for interrupting, but insists her matter is serious. She then explains that she desperately needs his help with a spreading miasma. Leaning on his desk in exhaustion, Noah apathetically asks what a miasma is. Hildegard describes a black mist spreading throughout the demon kingdom, which is lethal to humans. She concludes that although their territories are now connected, this miasma prevents anyone from entering the demon lands. Noah asks why he needs to enter, to which Hildegard explains the expanding miasma is bad for demons too, leading his maid to realize this is why the demons coveted human territory. As Noah complains about another problem, his familiar suggests it must be bad karma, but Noah vehemently denies this, boasting about his heroic past deeds. After his outburst, Hildegard timidly asks if he will accept her request, her eyes welling up with hopeful tears as she awaits his answer. With a heavy sigh, Noah begrudgingly mutters that it can't be helped, then suddenly springs to life, brightly declaring that he will solve this problem. Hildegard is immediately overjoyed, blushing and praising his kindness, while the maid simply smiles knowingly, holding a glass. An outside voice, however, questions his true intentions behind this sudden change of heart. The scene then shifts to the desolate landscape surrounding the Demon King's castle, Caronostia, where Noah arrives, noting the miasma is thickest here and needs investigating. His familiar promptly asks how exactly he plans to investigate the phenomenon. In that moment, a dark and calculating expression falls over Noah's face, and with a crazed grin, he announces his intention to expand the damage. His familiar is horrified, reminding Noah he promised to solve the problem. Noah then reveals his plan, wondering what would happen if the miasma spread to his territory. He concludes his lands would become uninhabitable, making a lord like himself obsolete. At this revelation, his familiar screams in horror, calling him the absolute worst. The familiar questions what will happen to Noah's citizens, but he assures it they'll just evacuate. And when questioned about their homes, Noah simply states he'll compensate them from his other assets, revealing his master plan to expand the damage and thus retire as a lord, leaving his familiar to sigh in resignation, muttering that Noah will fail anyway. Sometime later, Noah places a hand on the outer wall of the Demon King's castle, then stands within the grounds, identifying it as the castle's center. His familiar immediately feels sick, complaining about the thick, stagnant air. Yet it notes that Noah seems completely unfazed by the oppressive miasma. The familiar then looks up, guessing the miasma's source must be inside the castle, which leads Noah to theorize the castle is built over the source, perhaps in its basement. The familiar points out they can't investigate that, but Noah says there's a simple solution. With a wide grin, he declares he'll just blow the entire castle away. As the familiar shouts in disbelief, Noah explains this will release the pent-up miasma. The familiar then accuses him of being too reckless with his damage expansion plan, worrying that his magic will incinerate the entire demon kingdom, not just the castle. However, Noah brushes off the concern, saying he'll only destroy the building, and with that, he leaps high into the air above the miasma. Now hovering, he hands his familiar a tiny hard hat to wear for safety. From his high vantage point, Noah gazes down upon the entirety of the Demon King's castle. Finally, he points a finger towards the structure below, musing that this distance should be enough. With a final countdown, he prepares to unleash his power. And from his finger, a dark energy erupts, completely engulfing the Demon King's castle, causing the entire structure to violently disintegrate from the inside out. An act that makes his familiar scream in astonishment at the castle's obliteration. As the building's towers and walls are reduced to nothing but airborne debris, after which Noah winks, pleased that the castle has completely collapsed as planned, prompting his dazed familiar to demand an explanation for what just happened. So he explains that he simply created minute vibrations to shake the castle into dust. But the familiar retorts that there is nothing normal about Noah's abilities, when suddenly, a massive cloud of miasma erupts from the ground below, startling the familiar. While Noah pumps his fist in celebration, excited to see the pent-up energy released, laughing maniacally as the miasma spreads, rendering the land uninhabitable and ensuring his victory. As he continues his triumphant cackling, his familiar seems utterly done with his antics, leading it to quietly conclude that Noah himself is the true Demon King. A few days later, at a different location, a grand mansion stands under a clear sky, where a demon girl named Hildegard spreads her arms, delighted that the nasty miasma has vanished. A statement that causes Noah to react with pure, utter shock. Subsequently, Hildegard turns and cheerfully lunges toward him, full of praise, which leaves the prince completely flustered, demanding to know what she means. So she clarifies that the castle wasn't the miasma's source, a fact confirmed by its cursed fragments. Noah sweats, realizing the Demon King's castle was actually a miasma-generating device, at which Hildegard gleams, marveling at how he instantly saw through a centuries-old secret. Before she hugs him tightly, praising him for destroying the castle without harming the town, and winking, she adds that he must have understood their motives for destroying their symbol. Concluding this is his grand declaration that he will now lead the demon race, which causes Noah to panic, realizing he has accidentally earned the Demon King's complete trust. Later, a despairing wail echoes from the mansion, where Noah is buried in paperwork, crying out that his plans always backfire. As the spectral grudge of his predecessor looms, his familiar suggests getting an exorcism. Sometime later, Noah relaxes under a tree, determined to take the day off. But his familiars question his lazing about, while he declares it a perfect day for slacking. Suddenly, a strange thumping sound catches his attention, forcing his eyes open. Annoyed, he sits up, bothered by the persistent noise of something being struck. His familiar is also disturbed from its nap, wondering about the sound. Deciding to investigate, Noah walks toward the noise, surprised to find someone there. He discovers a young girl with glasses repeatedly practicing her swordsmanship on a post. With a powerful ki, she swings her blade and splits the wooden post in two. From a distance, Noah continues to watch the impacts of her training. He notes that it's just a child, which is unusual for an area so far from any village. As he approaches, the girl suddenly stops her training and turns toward him. Noah grabs the girl's shoulder from behind, gruffly asking what she's doing, which causes the startled girl to gasp in shock, and she instinctively swings her sword, only for Noah to block it with a small barrier. Unfazed, he notes her sturdiness, while his familiar looks on in amazement. The girl then expresses her disbelief, realizing he'd sensed her presence. So she quickly bows, apologizing for her rudeness, while asking if he's all right. Meanwhile, his familiar scolds him for being so harsh with a child. The girl then introduces herself as Julian, explaining that she is on a training journey. Noah watches her skeptically, quietly repeating the words, "training journey," to himself. His familiar whispers that she must be plotting something, to which Noah silently agrees. With a sudden grin, Noah decides to offer his personal assistance with her training, which leaves his familiar completely flabbergasted by the unexpected offer. Julian, on the other hand, brightens up, excitedly asking if he really means it. As the familiar scolds Noah for his incompetent move, Julian calls its reasoning foolish. The familiar thinks back, recalling how the evil spirit of Noah's predecessor always makes his plans succeed. Noah argues that there's no way, but the familiar insists his incompetent moves are the problem. Stealing his resolve, Noah announces his new plan. He laughs maniacally, vowing to utterly crush the girl's confidence and destroy his own reputation. Suddenly, his familiar seems to have a moment of realization. The small creature muses that it feels like it has seen this girl somewhere before. Julian readies her sword, asking what weapon Noah Dono will be using. And Noah thoughtfully glances down, pondering her question for a moment, before reaching down to pick up a simple broken branch from the ground. He then holds the stick aloft, declaring it's more than enough for her. Julian observes his immense confidence, realizing he's no ordinary person, so she digs her heels into the ground, preparing herself for the fight. With a powerful shout, she suddenly charges forward with incredible speed, which causes his familiar to gasp in utter shock at her quickness. Noah, however, simply smirks, commenting on how slow she is. In response, Julian unleashes a rapid series of strikes, creating multiple afterimages. But Noah effortlessly weaves between her attacks, dodging every single one. Julian stares in wide-eyed disbelief at his impossible evasion. Following this, Noah taunts her, asking if that's all she's got. His familiar watches from the side, completely flabbergasted by the display. It muses that she is far too strong to be just a normal child. Julian, on the other hand, seems to be blushing with a faint smile. She then gushes about how amazing Noah is, not thinking him a brute at all. Noah scoffs at her, questioning her condescending gaze. He then beckons her forward, demanding to see the results of her training. With renewed determination, Julian agrees and readies her sword once more. With a tremendous burst of energy, the two fighters clash, and Julian unleashes her autumn rain barrage with a flurry of strikes. However, Noah counters by executing the exact same technique with his branch. He grins ferociously, while perfectly mirroring her advanced sword style. His counterattack sends Julian flying helplessly into the air. Noah easily stands his ground, his simple stick having overpowered her blade. As Julian is thrown back, her glasses are knocked askew. She grits her teeth, sweating from the sheer force of his response. From across the clearing, Noah taunts her, questioning her supposed training. Julian can only clench her jaw in frustration at his words. Following this, Noah laughs maniacally, mocking how weak she is. Julian, however, pushes off the ground and rushes towards him again. She suddenly stops, trembling as she realizes her swordsmanship is useless against him. Noah looks on, remarking that her long training seems to have been pointless. With a wicked grin, he tells her to go crying back to her mother. In response, Julian declares that she has only one option left. She clarifies this is a technique developed to wear down her opponent. Furthermore, she explains it's not a move an ordinary person could withstand. Noah simply lets out a short, unimpressed scoff. He then smiles smugly, telling her that her tribute will be most excellent. Julian fiercely agrees to his terms, gripping her sword with resolve. Afterward, the two combatants face each other from a distance. With a powerful cry, Julian begins channeling immense energy into her blade. She dares him to take her next attack head-on, certain it will kill him. Unfazed, Noah smirks and accepts her challenge to face it directly. Julian screams as an incredible amount of power surges around her. She then unleashes her secret sword technique, the Sunlight Holy Heaven Thrust. In a surprising move, Noah counters by spitting a jet of water at her. The blast hits her squarely in the face, sending her glasses flying. As Julian is thrown backward, Noah watches with a satisfied grin. His cat familiar cries out, completely shocked by the underhanded tactic. Noah looks down at the fallen girl, commenting on his cowardly attack. He then asks why she expected him to fight fairly in a battle. Lying defeated on the ground, Julian groans weakly. Noah continues to taunt her, claiming he's teaching her a lesson about reality. He then declares that this proves he's not an immature person. Suddenly, Julian rises to her feet, causing Noah to look back in surprise. Her eyes sparkle with admiration as she shouts that it was magnificent. Both Noah and his familiar are completely stunned by her praise. She then enthusiastically compliments his swordsmanship, admitting that she was mistaken. A flustered Noah points at Julian, asking why she isn't Unwanted, depressed/upset. Julian then approaches him, admitting it's a shame her sword didn't work. But there's more. Blushing, she confesses that she has become completely captivated by his magnificent sword skills. In response, both Noah and his familiar reel back, utterly dumbfounded. She continues to draw closer, startling the prince with her sudden proximity. After picking up her glasses, Julian kneels and passionately begs to become his apprentice. The very next day, a demon girl named Hilda rushes forward, tearfully calling out for Noah. She leaps onto his back, prompting him to ask what the problem is this time. With tears streaming down her face, Hilda clings to him and repeatedly asks why. She then points down a grand hall, revealing Julian standing there with her sword. Julian proudly introduces herself as the hero and Noah's mortal enemy, causing him to scream. Just then, another girl suddenly recalls seeing the real hero Julian at the royal palace. She explains this to the shocked group, adding that Julian seems weak compared to Noah's past self. Meanwhile, a frightened Hilda continues to sob and cling to Noah for protection. Julian strides towards them, remarking that she is surprised he has taken the Demon King as a subordinate. Noah smirks, wondering if he should just kill her, while Hilda panics at the thought. However, Julian simply beams, stating she wouldn't kill one of Lord Noah's subordinates. She goes on to explain that since humans and demons have reconciled, her role as hero is over. Hearing this, Hilda celebrates with relief. realizing the greatest threat to her is gone. Noah, on the other hand, is completely baffled, as his attempt to be hated seems to have backfired. As both Hilda and Julian fawn over him, Noah seethes with annoyance, clutching his face in frustration and wondering how everything went so wrong. Sometime earlier, Julian appears before a king who claims he doesn't understand her report. The king looks shocked, questioning if it was Noah who defeated the Demon King. A nearby girl cheerfully clarifies that Noah has instead made the Demon King his subordinate, while Julian herself explains that she has sworn friendship with the Demon King. The revelation leaves the king completely stunned. Following this, Julian boldly announces she is renouncing her title as the hero. However, the king shouts in protest, insisting that this will be a problem. A confused Julian asks why, pointing out the Demon King is no longer an enemy. The king only grunts in frustration, unable to voice his true concerns. A map reveals his kingdom receives aid from other nations due to the Demon King threat. He then panics, realizing that with Noah solving the issue, his own competence will be questioned. He furiously declares that the Demon King cannot be trusted and must be defeated. Julian stands silently with her back to the throne, listening. Suddenly, the king orders her to use her holy sword and kill the Demon King now. His court joins in, shouting that the king is right, and that's what a hero does. As the cries to "kill" echo around her, Julian remains ominously still. The king can only stare back in utter disbelief, while Julian maintains a completely stoic expression. Just then, the sound of slow clapping echoes through the throne room, revealing a dark-cloaked man who calls the hero cool. This man, Darva, then steps forward, volunteering to replace Julian as the hero. The king watches his son with a troubled look. Meanwhile, Darva confidently promises he will defeat the Demon King. Julian turns back, saying he can defeat the Demon King if he likes. Darva smirks, accusing her of abandoning her title out of fear. At this, Julian's face darkens as the court members whisper about her. Darva then conjures a sword, declaring he will become the hero in her place. He subsequently stands opposite Julian, blade at the ready. However, Julian's eyes glow as she orders him to back off, a spirit dragon appearing behind her. The sudden display of power leaves Darva completely shocked. As Julian walks away, she tells him to continue his training and bids him farewell. Darva remains completely frozen in disbelief. Once she's gone, he turns to his father, desperately asking to be made the hero. The king instead clutches his robes and orders Darva to bring Noah to him. He then grabs his head in frustration, shouting to bring that idiot back. Darva is left utterly confused by the king's outburst. Darva desperately pleads with the king, insisting he can defeat the Demon King. But the king furiously points, threatening to banish him if he continues to disobey. In response, Darva drops his sword in shock as the court looks on. He then sinks to his knees in utter defeat, gritting his teeth as a bead of sweat rolls down his face. A dark expression crosses his face as he silently vows never to forgive Noah. Meanwhile, at a large estate, a cat-eared woman named Rui is introduced. Inside, she finds Noah lounging and asks to play with his cat's paw pads. Noah offers her some dried fish, to which she begrudgingly agrees. Afterward, Noah relaxes in a chair, contentedly petting a purring cat on his lap. Rui then cheekily suggests that if he hates his work so much, he should just run away. The idea strikes Noah like a bolt of lightning, leaving him utterly stunned. Suddenly energized, he leaps onto Rui's shoulders, declaring he'll abandon everything. He enthusiastically repeats that he doesn't have to do the work his father gave him. With a flourish, Noah announces his grand new plan. Operation: throw all annoying things in the trash. Rui comments with a deadpan expression that she actually quite likes the name. Turning back, Noah tells her she doesn't have to stay if she doesn't want to. Rui becomes flustered, realizing she'll be held responsible for his escape. With that, Noah grabs the small cat and makes a dash for the exit. However, the moment he steps outside, a powerful gust of wind blows them both away. Struggling against the fierce wind, Noah realizes he's cursed, so he teleports away, flying towards an inn for safety. Sometime later, Rui stands before a snowy cabin with their clothes hung out to dry. Inside, Noah gleefully stretches on a bed, celebrating his freedom from work. He tells a concerned Rui not to worry about the Carter territory. Sitting together, Noah suggests visiting his sister now that he's unemployed. He then decides to write a letter to his older sister, the third Princess Mason. As he writes, Rui recalls that Mason is the wife of the next emperor. Rui teases him, saying his people won't give him up so easily. She continues, doubting a simple letter will convince them to abandon him. Ignoring her, Noah finishes composing the lengthy message. Rui then asks how he'll deliver the letter, noting the long journey to the Empire. In response, Noah quickly folds the letter into a paper crane. He confidently holds up the completed origami figure. With a simple word, he begins to imbue it with magic. The paper crane suddenly grows to an enormous size, shocking them both. Noah cheerfully explains he breathed life into it, which Rui finds impossible. However, he notices the ink has smudged because of the rain. With a devious grin, Noah decides he'll just make the storm disappear. He explains he'll counteract the tornado by making it spin the opposite way. With the window flung open, Noah prepares to face the storm. Rui stands by, watching with a tense expression. Noah then gestures with his finger, gathering magical energy to reverse the tempest's rotation. Suddenly, the downpour in the sky begins to change direction. The entire storm starts spinning backwards, causing the clouds to dissipate. Rui's eyes spiral in disbelief, utterly shocked by this impossible feat. For the finishing touch, Noah summons a ball of fire to evaporate the remaining moisture. A massive torrent of flames erupts into the sky, burning away the last of the storm. In an instant, the land around the cabin is completely clear. Rui gazes up in amazement as the storm has vanished, leaving a starry night sky. Having solved the weather problem, Noah gently holds the dry paper crane. He releases it out the window, telling the massive bird to deliver the letter to his sister. Afterward, as Noah prepares for bed, Rui warns that his subjects might still track him down. He dives into bed, smugly certain that no one could ever find him. The next morning, the sun shines brightly above the inn. Rui stretches sleepily and wishes a waking Noah a good morning. However, Noah bolts upright in bed with a look of pure terror. To his shock, Rista is standing in the room with breakfast, just as surprised to see him. He immediately turns on Rui, accusing her of betraying him since she was the only one who knew his location. As a frantic Rui denies everything, Noah desperately wonders how Rista could have possibly found him. Rista nervously begins to explain how she found them. She bashfully reveals that she has been granted a special gift. This news leaves both Noah and Rui completely bewildered. Rista explains a gift is a skill granted to a subordinate, but Noah questions why a human would receive one. She then compares Noah's existence to that of a demon king, which explains the phenomenon. Noah immediately asks what specific power she received. With a deep blush, Rista proudly announces her ability is territory detection. She clarifies this allows her to sense Noah's location anywhere, much to his horror. While Rista swoons, Noah screams that her power has gone beyond simple stalking. He then confronts her about the note he left, which Rista confirms she found. Rista tearfully recalls his message about stopping the flood and protecting his people. She giddily interprets this as proof of his deep affection for her. In response, Noah yells in frustration that she is reading far too much into his words. However, Rui points out that since he did stop the storm, Rista's conclusion is logical. Rista smugly explains she used her gift to find him once the storm vanished, adding that a carriage is waiting. Just outside, a massive crowd of his subjects cheers gratefully for Noah. The sight fills Noah with absolute despair as Rui smirks beside him. Later, in the carriage, a defeated Noah hides his face, while Rui notes that he can no longer escape. Meanwhile, a large ship is shown sailing across the open sea. On board, Noah's sister sits by a window, anticipating their long-awaited reunion. Rui joyfully stretches her arms, shouting about seeing the sea for the first time. Her unrestrained excitement earns an exasperated sigh from a nearby figure. Suddenly, Noah appears in beach attire, scolding her for being too excited. She explains this is her first ocean visit as they walk through the port town. Now back in his formal clothes, Noah sternly asks if she knows why they are here. The question leaves Rui completely baffled and lost for words. Aboard their ship, Rui reminds him they came to meet his sister, who is visiting. Noah sheepishly admits that he was actually supposed to go to the Empire. Rui then correctly assumes they are here to welcome his sister at the port. However, Noah clarifies it's not just a welcome, as his sister is bringing her husband. Gazing out from the ship, he calls this a perfect chance, much to Rui's confusion. She immediately questions what kind of chance he is talking about. With a sinister grin, Noah announces his intention to kidnap the prince. Rui is utterly aghast, unable to believe what she's just heard. Noah calmly explains that taking the prince would surely lead to a disastrous war. He visualizes his territory being invaded and destroyed, achieving his ultimate goal. Rui furiously argues his idea is insane and would only hurt his own people. An image shows several citizens, including Rista, horrified at the thought of dying so easily. Looking out at the water, Noah spots the approaching ship carrying his target. He then dismisses the tiny, fuming Rui on his shoulder, calling it a simple mock kidnapping. A man on a ship points to an explosion on the water, shouting for his men to advance. Unseen by them, Noah gracefully floats through the air toward the commotion. With Rui on his shoulder, he surveys the scene, questioning the number of escort ships. Rui points out the many small boats surrounding the large vessel, confirming they must be the guard. Noah smirks, telling her to watch his magnificent performance unfold. Nearby, the eye-patched captain of another ship grins confidently. Suddenly, Noah lands with a powerful thud on the deck of the pirate ship, startling the crew. One of the pirates looks up in confusion, wondering what just happened. The enraged captain then screams at Noah, demanding to know who he is. Noah dramatically announces he is the Lord of Carter, here to take something precious from them. Hearing this, Rui shuts her eyes in despair, lamenting that he has become a complete villain. The pirates stand frozen as Noah casually walks towards them. Their captain glares, repeating Noah's words about taking something precious. Noah clarifies with a smile that he has come to take the important prince. Rui, however, realizes their conversation seems to be completely misaligned. The pirate captain curses, angrily noting that his opponent is just a single person. He orders his men to attack, but Noah simply scoffs, daring them to try. In a flash, Noah stands victorious on the deck, surrounded by his defeated opponents. One of the pirates lies on the ground, foaming at the mouth and completely incapacitated. The pirate captain can only stare in utter disbelief at the unbelievable scene before him. The stunned pirate captain demands to know what Noah just did, while Noah casually looks away, feigning ignorance, explaining he simply used wind magic to remove the oxygen around them, which causes Rui to panic, exclaiming that the men will die. But Noah calmly reassures her, impressing the captain with his precise, chantless magic. Rui, however, insists that normal people use cool incantations. Meanwhile, the captain curses Noah under his breath, calling him a monster, and both Noah and Rui suddenly realize his next move, as the pirate captain yells a threat before turning to run, promptly leaping over the side of the ship into the water below. Noah watches him go, explaining he's a messenger meant to inform the Empire. Although Rui expresses her doubt that the man will head there, with the captain gone, Noah turns his attention to finding the prince, locating a door below deck that is heavily secured with chains and a padlock. He notes the absence of a key to unlock it, then dismisses the lock as trivial and shatters it with ease. With the way cleared, he cheerfully throws the doors open, revealing a bound blonde woman who looks up at him with a weary expression. Noah greets her with a wide grin, identifying her as his sister, Majin. The captive Majin, tied up with her guards, can only wonder how he found her. Noah looks on in bewilderment, asking why she's tied up, and Majin looks up at him gratefully, asking if he's her rescuer. This flusters Noah, who becomes bashful and stammers, as he notices the thick ropes binding her hands. He then sees that the two men tied with her are smiling broadly. Frustrated, Noah shouts again, demanding to know why his sister is restrained. She explains they were captured by pirates on their way to Carter territory. Hearing the word pirates makes both Noah and Rui gasp in shock. Noah then cries out in disbelief, realizing the men aren't her guards. Majin addresses him as Your Highness, declaring him her savior for arriving so quickly. Suddenly, Rui appears to have a moment of startling realization as a small white-haired girl wearing a crown stands on the deck. The little girl looks up with an eager, hopeful expression, and then rushes forward to give a surprised Noah a big thank you hug. Rui watches the scene unfold, muttering to herself in utter disbelief. The girl suddenly realizes with a shock that she is hugging Prince Garcia. Still holding on to him, she exclaims that she thought she was done for. She then looks up at him with a face full of tearful joy and relief. Meanwhile, Meijin observes the exchange with a gentle, knowing smile. Her two companions also watch with delighted, prayerful expressions. Rui the cat sighs, recognizing the princess's adoring expression. The scene flashes back to the pirate's ship sailing calmly across the sea, where a man suddenly cries out as his oar snaps in his hands, as a gigantic shark erupts from the water before his very eyes. The pirate curses Noah's name one last time before being pulled under. Later, Princess Garcia cheerfully asks Noah to teach her magic, explaining that she's become a firm believer in him since her rescue. Noah, however, tells the flustered girl that he's too busy, which causes Garcia to droop her head in disappointment. She begins to cry with guilt, while Noah playfully teases her for it. Just then, another voice chimes in, making a request as well. It's Meijin, who suggests spending time with Noah would be a precious memory for Garcia. Noah looks over in surprise, seeing his sister standing with the young princess. He turns away, admitting he can't deny a request from Meijin. She smiles warmly, thanking Noah and telling him he's always been kind. Noah responds with a private, knowing smirk. As they walk, Rui notes the large age difference between Meijin and Garcia. Noah comments that it's far too early for a political marriage at her age. He wonders aloud if there are special circumstances behind how sheltered she is. A cunning grin spreads across his face as he suggests there's more going on. Rui narrates a chibi-style skit about selling out the useless Prince Noah. Back in the present, Noah energetically tells Meijin to report her findings to the Empire. The group then heads out from the residence, making their way toward the forest. They soon arrive at a quiet clearing deep among the trees. Noah declares that Princess Garcia's first lesson will be on basic magic manipulation. He explains the theory of drawing mana from one's core and circulating it through the body. With a confident shout, Noah announces that he will demonstrate the technique. A massive surge of energy erupts from his body, leaving Garcia utterly amazed. Noah smirks, taunting that he isn't even close to using his real power. Watching from a distance, Rui dryly observes that Noah gets along well with children. With his demonstration complete, Noah confidently tells Garcia to try it herself. While Noah and Rui watch, the young princess strains to focus her energy. Rui worriedly asks Noah if mana manipulation isn't a very high-level technique. Noah scoffs that it's as easy as breathing, but Rui argues it's hard for humans. Just as Noah says Garcia can't possibly do it, she suddenly shouts that she succeeded. To their astonishment, Garcia is now floating, surrounded by a powerful aura. Both Noah and Rui are completely dumbfounded by this unexpected development. Rui stares in wide-eyed shock, unable to form a complete sentence. Meanwhile, Noah marvels at the sheer volume of magical power Garcia is emitting. Garcia, however, panics, crying out that she doesn't know how to stop it. As Garcia's power rages, Rui frantically warns Noah that she can't contain the magic. The young princess looks up desperately, calling out to His Highness for help. Deciding he has no other choice, Noah leaps toward Garcia, declaring he'll use brute force. In a flash, he delivers a swift chop to her neck, knocking her unconscious as Meijin watches. With her power finally quelled, Noah gently catches the limp princess in his arms. He then lands safely on the ground as Meijin and Rui hurry to his side. Meijin gazes down at the sleeping princess, overcome with relief. Tears well up in her eyes as she looks toward Noah, her voice trembling. Suddenly, Meijin embraces the unconscious Garcia, sobbing that the time has finally come. A perplexed Noah observes this scene, asking Meijin what she is talking about. Meijin tearfully replies that this must have been a good last memory for Garcia. Hearing this, Noah's confusion deepens as he questions the meaning of her words. Kneeling on the ground, Meijin begins to explain the full story to him. She reveals that Princess Garcia was born frail and wasn't expected to live long. Rui reacts with complete shock, wondering why a sick person was brought to such a place. Maijin continues, explaining that meeting Noah was her beloved princess's final wish. Immediately, Rui furiously asks Noah if striking the weak princess was really necessary. Noah, however, appears genuinely confused, claiming his method was the best option. He then dismisses Garcia as a fool, which causes Rui and Maijin to become even more agitated. Unaware of the argument, Princess Garcia remains peacefully unconscious. Maijin recalls Garcia's wish to watch His Highness grow up until she became an adult. She then remembers cradling the weak princess, sadly noting that time never came. Overcome with emotion, Rui bursts into tears, apologizing for misjudging the princess. Noah, however, looks down at the still unconscious Garcia, trying to get her attention. Suddenly, a small jolt runs through the princess's body. Princess Garcia then sits straight up with a huge yawn, as if she just woke from a deep sleep. A shocked Maijin asks if she is all right, to which Garcia cheerfully responds that she is fine. Rui stares in utter disbelief, stammering about what is going on. Stretching her arms, Garcia remarks that her body feels incredibly light. Maijin turns to Noah, demanding to know what he did to the princess. He plainly states that her magic circuits were running rampant, so he just adjusted them. Hearing this, a confused Maijin and Rui question what magic circuits even are. Noah clarifies that an incredible amount of magic was congested in her body, so he cleared the pathway. Maijin begins to understand that the princess's sickness was caused by her own magic. Patting Garcia's head, Noah concludes her body simply couldn't keep up with her vast mana. He further explains that since he's reconfigured them, her magic circuits will now adapt as she grows. Garcia's eyes sparkle as she looks up at him, asking if that really means what she thinks. Realizing his mistake, Noah facepalms as Rui notes he has. From a distance, a man watching the scene throws his hands up, yelling in frustration. Meanwhile, Maijin observes Noah with a small, knowing smile on her face. Garcia joyfully hugs a flustered Noah, calling him a truly kind person. Leaning in close, Maijin tells him she will report everything to the Empire. A few days later, a butler dashes through a mansion, shouting about a dire matter from the Empire. He bursts into Noah's room with a letter of appreciation, causing the prince to scream in terror. The letter expresses immense gratitude for healing the princess and promises eternal friendship. Noah cries out in despair, wondering what on earth Maijin wrote in her report. In a flashback, Maijin reports to the Emperor that Noah cured Garcia in a single moment. Back in the present, Noah grits his teeth as Rui confirms that is indeed what happened. Maijin then smugly informs him the letter is being displayed throughout the entire kingdom. Rui elaborates that his fame has spread, even gaining the favor of the imperial prince. Noah screams in utter horror, lamenting how long this recurring pattern will continue. Elsewhere, a lone carriage travels swiftly along a forest path. Inside, a figure with sharp nails reads a letter written in a strange language. After reading, they angrily crumple the paper in their gloved hands. A blond man with an eye patch glares intently, vowing that he will be waiting for Noah. Later, the same man sits in a carriage, impatiently asking if they've reached the Carter territory. He complains about the slow pace, remarking that Noah could have arrived in an instant. With a determined look, he declares they should take a shortcut. One of his armored knights turns around, questioning his statement. The man insists it would be faster to cut through the abyss wood, but his knight protests its danger. The knight prepares his sword, clearly disagreeing with the command. However, the eye patch man, Darva, scoffs at his insolence and orders him out of the carriage. The knight grabs Darva's arm in disbelief, insisting he was only offering a loyal warning. Darva glares back with a furious expression. Turning to his other knights, he angrily declares that they are also fired. They protest, pleading with Darva and reminding him he'll be exiled if he fails his mission. Just then, the entire carriage comes to a sudden, violent halt. A startled Darva looks up, demanding to know what's happening. Outside, a massive shadow crashes through the dense forest trees. A fearsome dragon lands directly on top of the carriage, unleashing a torrent of fire. Darva's eye widens in pure shock and disbelief. Inside, a knight urges him to flee from the monster, to which Darva angrily retorts that he knows. He then shoves his men out of the way, claiming they'll only slow him down. Peeking outside, Darva sees something that makes him sweat. A massive horde of various monsters has completely surrounded them. His knight cries out that they are completely trapped by the beasts. Darva grits his teeth, a nervous sweat dripping down his face. Despite his earlier bravado, he turns and orders his knights to buy him time to escape. His men can only stare back, utterly baffled by his command. Darva proclaims their commoner lives have no value, and that protecting him is their greatest honor. The two knights are left speechless by Darva's selfish words. Suddenly, one of the knights shoves Darva hard, sending him stumbling. Darva lands on the ground, utterly bewildered by this act of defiance. The knight then declares they won't follow Prince Darva and will escape on their own. An enraged Darva reminds them of his royal status, questioning if they'll truly abandon him. The knights exchange another look, clearly unimpressed by his title. Turning away, the knight proclaims the nation's true treasure is the seventh prince, Noah. Darva can only stare, completely dumbfounded by this revelation. They recall how Noah once saved them, unlike a prince who sacrifices his men to survive. The knight then scoffs that Darva isn't even worthy to be compared to Noah. They abandon Darva, who stares in horror as the monsters close in. Darva trembles, unable to process being called an incompetent prince. His eyes widen in fear and denial as the words echo in his mind. Looking back at the monsters, he questions who they dare call incompetent. Just then, the grotesque beasts finally swarm him from all sides. Pushed to his limit, Darva draws his sword, preparing for a desperate fight. As a shadowy monster lunges, he screams in terror that he doesn't want to die. He desperately thrusts his sword into another creature, blood splattering his face. A moment later, an enormous, terrifying monster looms over him, roaring furiously. Sometime later, Darva sits dazed amidst a mountain of defeated monsters. Still reeling, Darva denies the reality of the situation, trembling in the darkness. Suddenly, a mysterious, hooded figure appears, sitting atop the monster pile and asking if he needs help. Darva looks up, completely perplexed by this sudden arrival. The figure comments on his ability to slay so many monsters, assuming he must be a sword saint. They then offer Darva a present, a super drug created by the Dark Sage, held in an ornate bottle. This person explains that drinking it will grant him the strongest dark power, asking for his thoughts. Still bloodied, Darva grunts, clearly tempted by the offer. The mysterious figure leans closer with a sinister smile, sensing his eagerness. With a desperate look, Darva reaches out, demanding they give him the potion. Pleased, the figure agrees to give him the bottle, promising it will bring great chaos. Darva takes the ornate bottle, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. Without a second of hesitation, he uncorks the vial. He immediately drinks the dark liquid, and a malevolent aura begins to swirl around him. As the power takes hold, he lets out a horrifying scream, much to the figure's delight. His body begins to grotesquely transform, his hand enlarging into a monstrous claw. The transformation completes, turning Darva into a hulking, demonic creature with glowing white eyes. The hooded figure marvels at the sight, praising the Dark Sage's wonderful secret medicine. Far away, Noah suddenly looks over his shoulder, sensing a strange disturbance. Noticing his abrupt change in demeanor, Liana asks him what's wrong. Noah silently wonders about the ominous presence he just felt. Liana urgently calls out to Noah, concerned by his sudden change. He tells Theta that his complexion has changed and something is amiss. Just then, a flustered maid rushes in with a report from Ein village. Both Noah and Liana react with shock upon hearing the village's name. The maid explains that a mysterious monster is attacking the burning village. At that very moment, the transformed Darva lets out a furious roar. He smashes through the earth with a powerful demonic strike. His attack continues to tear through the town, sending debris flying. The sheer force of the blow causes unimaginable destruction. Surveying the devastation, Darva pants with exhilaration. He grins wickedly, feeling an immense power overflowing from within. Suddenly, a massive sword with a single, unblinking eye emerges from the ground. Darva seizes the demonic blade, declaring this is the power he has always sought. He proclaims that with this strength, everyone will finally acknowledge him. A crazed grin spreads across his face as he relishes his newfound power. His attention is then drawn to a lone girl standing in the ruins. His eye twitches with rage as he mutters for her to die. With that, he swings his massive sword down towards the terrified girl. However, the blade is suddenly stopped just before it hits its target. Darva looks on in complete disbelief, questioning what just happened. Noah stands defiantly, having appeared just in time to stop the sword and protect the girl. Upon seeing his new opponent, a wide, sinister grin spreads across Darva's face. In response, Noah extends his hand, preparing to unleash his poisonous power.